Hello again. During this program, we stress the importance of approaching product design with an inclusive mindset. Because we're aware that marginalized groups are often overlooked during the ideation phase, we really want you to understand that good UX design strives to create a user experience that is inclusive of as many users as possible. In this video, I'll discuss an example of designing for social good, where focusing on the needs of elderly nursing center residents led to the improvement of the Nest Hub Max. Nest Hub Max is a screen device that offers video calling, task scheduling, and other smart technology capabilities. Creating prototypes that include accessibility options for people with low vision or people with low hearing has become commonplace. For example, when Google's Nest Hub Max premiered, it featured an HD screen with touch capabilities. Users could customize usability settings like text size and volume for more accessible use. The problem? Although designs like these are built with accessibility in mind, the products themselves remain centered around able-bodied users. Although people with impairments are able to adjust the product to fit them, the product was not made specifically for their needs. In 2020, however, the Nest team switched gears to focus on one of these groups of users. As a part of Google's Hardware for Good initiative, the team set out to make life more connected for nursing home residents. Globally, there are millions of senior citizens living in assisted living facilities. This population can often feel emotional and social isolation from the outside world. Some residents are located far from their families, while others are put under strict visitation regulations because they are more susceptible to ailments that can lead to serious health concerns. Although the Nest team had considered accessibility concerns like low hearing and low vision, when they created the Nest Hub Max, it failed to satisfy the needs of those living in senior facilities. As a solution, the Nest team created a program to set up customized Nest Hub Max smart displays for participating residents in senior living facilities, starting with the one in Washington. First, the designers simplified actions that promote connectedness among those who are not used to operating technology. By adding more entry points into activities through on-screen cards and prompts, residents could efficiently operate the Nest Hub Max display. The design also allows them to access their contacts and make video calls more easily. The team then designed an experience that focuses on voice-enabled actions rather than touch. Seniors can find skin conductivity tasks an issue because touch screens may not easily detect their taps because their skin often has less moisture. Creating voice-enabled actions helps them avoid interacting physically with the device. Lastly, the Nest team improved the Nest Hub Max by making the platform easy to set up. Instead of requiring a Google account for sign-in, the platform runs on a signed-out mode and collects minimal data. This makes it easy for residents who aren't tech-savvy to plug and play without extensive knowledge of technology. These Nest Hub Max updates were created with a specific audience in mind: senior living facility residents. But these new features will also improve accessibility for a larger audience. For example, the simplified designs can work well for busy professionals who want to schedule a task quickly. Or the voice commands can be helpful for users trying to multitask activities like hands-on cooking and making video calls. Rethinking the UX process through the lens of this marginalized group ended up helping all kinds of users. As you move on to design your own products, remember that oftentimes what's beneficial for a specific population may be just as useful for a broader audience. I hope you enjoyed this look into a real-world example of the design process. Goodbye for now.
Participating in this program is something I've been really, really excited about ever since I heard about it. Education plays a big part in my life, and I credit the opportunities I've gotten through education with opening up all these opportunities that I've had and that I've been lucky enough to take advantage of. I'm a first-generation immigrant. I came here to the US when I was 12, and I've had my fair share of seeing what the world's like when it isn't very diverse. And I'm originally from the Philippines, and I don't see a lot of Filipinos growing up in my career. I got into UX, I would say probably typically atypical for people who've been doing this for about as long as I have. When I was going to college, there was no such thing as UX as an actual field. I actually have an undergraduate degree in fine art. I was a painter, an illustrator. I didn't know about the high-tech industry as a place to work. But once I got here, I got exposed to usability engineers who I worked with that made me realize there's this whole deep field of understanding how users think, cognitive psychology, and getting my first taste of user research in the context of designing digital products. I moved from doing graphic design and illustration to actually doing, web UI design. And then I followed one opportunity after another. And then a few years into my career, people started talking about user experience. So in a way, I fell into the field as it was organically growing around me. Someone I worked with at Oracle had gone to Microsoft, and through networking, they said, well, I like working with you. Come work with me over at Microsoft. I was able to turn what was then a hobby. I was a kind of a hardcore gamer, built my own PCs to play games. And I found this opportunity to kind of leave the enterprise business software world behind and move into games. But, pro tip, if you turn a hobby into a job, you're likely to lose a hobby. Another opportunity opened up, and I joined Netflix. And I led their website design team and then their TV design team. Somehow that kind of opened up doors to join Google, a company that I had admired for, at that point, quite a long time. A lot of designers, when they get into doing this kind of work, really likes the idea of working on things that affect a lot of people's lives. And YouTube's one of those products where literally about half of the people who are on the internet use YouTube. And one of the things that really drives me day to day is I like learning new things. I think, the more experience I've gained, the more I realize how little I actually know and how much more there is to learn. And next thing I know, here I am, 25 years later, and I'm still learning and I'm still kind of growing with the industry. And I find myself fortunate to now be on this end of the table, talking to people about UX, introducing them to UX, and helping them get into it. Hi, I'm Paolo, and I lead UX for YouTube ads.
Hello again. I hope you're excited to start your third project, where you'll design a product for social good. You'll start by designing a dedicated mobile app, and then create a responsive website later in the course. You'll use all of the skills you've learned so far in this program in a real-world context. You'll start by learning about progressive enhancement and graceful degradation, which are approaches you can take to design across devices and products. Next, I'll highlight why it's important to focus on the user in all of our work by sharing perspective from Google. Then, we'll discuss how to design across devices and screen sizes. To help you design seamless user experiences across devices, I'll teach you about the 4 C's. I'll also introduce you to the differences between dedicated mobile apps and responsive web apps. With all of this new knowledge, you'll begin your final portfolio project. You'll start with the empathize phase, where you'll create personas, user stories, and user journey maps. Then, you'll move on to the define phase, where you'll identify the user need your project will focus on and build a problem statement. Finally, you'll make your way into the ideate phase, where you'll conduct a competitive audit and come up with ideas for your dedicated mobile app design through sketching. There's a lot to consider in this course, like choosing whether to solve a real need in your own community or to use a designing for social good prompt from Sharpen. The opportunity to have a positive impact on the world around you is endless. So let's get started. Hey there! You're getting ready to begin the design process for your 3rd project, where you'll design both a mobile app and responsive website. Up until this point, throughout the certificate program, you've designed a standalone mobile app and a responsive website for 2 different prompts. Now it's time to bring together all that you've learned to design a mobile app and responsive website to address the same user problem. As you embark on this project, you might be wondering, should I start to design the mobile app or responsive website first? That's exactly what we'll discuss in this video. As a UX designer, our goal is to always put the user first and keep their needs front and center. When it comes to designing across devices and products, like you'll be doing in this project, there are a couple approaches you can take. The first approach is known as progressive enhancement. Progressive enhancement means designing from the smallest screen to the largest screen. The progressive enhancement approach is also known as bottom-up designing, because you first design for the smallest and most basic version of your site, like for a mobile phone, and then embellish your designs for larger screen sizes. The progressive enhancement approach allows us designers to focus on the basic capabilities of the product we're designing at the beginning of the project. By starting with a small screen size, we have to choose the most important elements to prioritize on the screen. Then, we can add more advanced features and interactions as we move to larger devices and screen sizes. As a designer, using the progressive enhancement approach allows you to highlight the most important content from the start and come up with a clear vision of how the website should appear on all device sizes and types. Progressive enhancement is closely related to a mobile-first philosophy. A mobile-first philosophy means that we start by designing the mobile version of a product and later adapt it to fit larger screens, like tablets, laptops, and desktop computers. In the past, many designers started with the desktop version of a website and then tried to adapt it for smaller screens, like tablets and mobile phones. But in recent years, a mobile-first approach has become increasingly popular in the world of UX design. Why? Well, each year, the number of mobile phone users around the world grows. Since we're designing with users' needs front and center, this means designing for the devices and screen sizes they're using most. But as you might have guessed, designing from the smallest screen to larger screens is not the only way to go. In fact, you might follow exactly the opposite approach, which is known as graceful degradation. Graceful degradation means designing from the largest screen to smaller screens. The graceful degradation approach is also known as top-down designing because you start with a large screen with a lot of features and interactions and work your way down toward a smaller screen where the features and interactions are scaled back. The graceful degradation approach became popular among UX designers when desktop computers were the most used device. We'd start with the desktop version of a website, since that's where the users were most, and then try to adapt our designs for smaller screens, like tablets and mobile phones. With these two approaches in mind, which should you use as you design your third project in this program? You should decide based on the user you're trying to serve. For example, if the user you're designing for is in an emerging market or is an online shopper, then using a progressive enhancement approach probably makes sense. This way, you can focus your design on a mobile phone screen first, which is what your user is most likely to use. On the other hand, if the user you're designing for is a student in a classroom, a graceful degradation approach might make sense, so you can prioritize the desktop computer experience. Having a clear picture of the type of user you're designing for is key before you get too far into the project. This is part of the reason why the design process starts with empathy, so you can get to know your users well. Okay, there's a lot for you to think about when it comes to your first project and the user you're designing for. To provide you with a little more food for thought, I'll share Google's philosophy on prioritizing the user in the next video. Meet you there. Hello, you've just learned about progressive enhancement and graceful degradation, which are two approaches for designing across devices and screen sizes. In this video, I'll share some inside scoop about how Google focuses on the user in all of our work. Here at Google, we hold our values near and dear. We've written them up as 10 things we know to be true. And the very first one is all about the user. Our mantra is, focus on the user and all else will follow. Since the beginning, Google has focused on providing the best user experience possible. Whether we're designing a new internet browser or changing the Google search homepage, we take great care to ensure that our products will ultimately serve the user, rather than our own goals or bottom line. Google has adapted its range of products over the years to ensure we're focusing on the user first and foremost. Think about Google Maps, for example. Across devices and screen sizes, a couple of things about Google Maps are consistent. First, there's a search bar at the top of the page, because we know users are coming to Google Maps to search for specific locations or landmarks. If you use the mobile app version of Google Maps, there's even a microphone in the search bar to allow users to speak their requests. We know users of the mobile app are likely to be on the go, so typing in the search bar might not be easy. This is just one example of designing with our users in mind. Second, the directions button is easy to identify in a bright blue color because we know users often use maps to navigate. This emphasis helps users quickly find the most common user flow, which is finding directions. Like I mentioned, at Google and as a UX designer in general, you need to be focused on the user and their needs. One way this philosophy comes to life at Google is when we're designing for access and equity. Think back all the way to the beginning of the program, when you learned about the next billion users, or NBU. These are the billion people around the world who are accessing the web for the first time. As they become regular internet users, the chance that they will be using a mobile device is very strong. So designing solutions based on a mobile-first philosophy ensures that the content, interactions, and features of the product will be accessible for all of these new potential users. This isn't just a trend for the next billion users, though. The first or primary device for accessing the internet for the vast majority of people around the world is a mobile phone. 10 or 15 years ago, personal desktop computers wired to the internet at businesses, schools, and homes were the only ways people got online. But this setup required infrastructure and privilege that most people didn't have. Mobile phones have democratized internet access due to their relatively low cost and ubiquity, and billions of people around the world are feeling the transformative power of having the world's information universally accessible and useful. Mobile users are key to the market, and their influence continues to grow. Whether your focus is on helping people find directions or reaching the next billion users, knowing your user and their context is the most important thing to keep in mind as you design. In the next video, we'll continue to keep our users top of mind as we design. We'll discuss some considerations when designing across devices. Let's go. Hey there! You're getting ready to begin the design process for your third project, where you'll design both a mobile app and responsive website. Let's discuss how to design a consistent and cohesive experience across both. UX designers have to plan for a nearly endless number of different devices, their screen sizes, and input methods like keyboard or microphone. Why? Because the number of devices available to experience content on is constantly growing and changing. Plus, a user is likely to look at the same website across devices like their mobile phone, tablet, laptop, and TV, so they should all be consistent. When you're building a new product, it's important to focus your design process on one device first. Start on the device where your target audience, also known as target users, spends the most time doing tasks that are similar or related to the tasks you're designing for. There's no one-size-fits-all answer here. It depends on the project and your target audience. Designing across devices requires knowledge of how each of those target audience would want to interact with the product. The way users interact with mobile devices or smartwatches will probably be different from how they interact with the website they're viewing on the desktop. You can figure this out as part of the UX research process. To design effectively for a specific device, there's a lot to consider. First, you have to be mindful of the device's screen size and resolution as you map out your product's user experience. Resolution is the level of sharpness and clarity of an image. In addition, you need to figure out the context of use, or how and when users will use that device. It's also important to think about how the functionality of your design will be different for each device based on how users interact with it. Knowing the interaction context is important because it helps you understand the different types of input methods, like a touchscreen, keyboard, mouse, switch, or microphone that your users might use to interact with your product. Finally, consider the content layout, or how information is organized on the screen. The layout affects how users access information effectively and influences your content's readability. As we design for more than one device, we have to be sure that we're providing a smooth experience across all devices. To do that effectively, we have to design with the 4 C's in mind: consistency, continuity, context, and complementary. Consistency means having a uniform design, so users can expect the design to feel familiar across devices and products. Take Google, for example. When you log into any Google product, you'll always find your profile in the top right of your screen. This placement might seem like a minor detail, but when users know that they can always find their profile in the top right of their screen, it creates a consistent user experience. Continuity means providing users with a smooth and uninterrupted experience as they move between devices. Without continuity, users can become frustrated and confused. For example, imagine you're designing a website and app for email. A user should be able to start writing an email on their laptop, save it as a draft, and finish that email later through an app on their mobile phone. Context means designing for the needs of a specific device and the way in which the user will use that device in any given situation. For example, imagine that a user has an email app on both their phone and smartwatch. They're probably not going to compose an entire email on the small smartwatch screen. But they might still want to get notifications about new emails, see important messages, and have quick responses ready. Designers have to think about the context of the user situation and adapt the design for the way the users interact with each device. Lastly, complementary means taking into account how each device can make the overall user experience even better. For example, imagine you might have a family member that you keep in touch with over email. You might write most of your emails to them through the desktop version of the product, but you might build on those emails using the product's complementary mobile app, which has features like adding photos directly from your phone. Now you're familiar with 4 ways to provide your users with a smooth experience across devices. Coming up, we'll zoom in on one widely used device, the mobile phone, and discuss the difference between a web app and a mobile app. Hello! You've just learned how the 4 C's can help you create the best user experience with your dedicated mobile app and your responsive website. Keep consistency, continuity, context, and complementary in mind as you move forward in this course. As you know by now, for your third portfolio project, you'll design a dedicated mobile app and a responsive website. That's what you'll build throughout this course. To set your project up for success, you need to know about the differences between dedicated mobile apps and responsive web apps. That's exactly what we'll cover in this video. So, what is the difference? A dedicated mobile app is built to live on the mobile device and is accessed through an icon on the phone's home screen. Dedicated mobile apps are also called native mobile apps. A responsive web app is an actual website that adapts to the device the user is on and is accessed through a mobile phone's web browser. Imagine you're looking for a job and using your mobile phone. You receive an email from LinkedIn with a link to a job opening on their platform. When you click the link to the job posting, you're prompted to sign into your LinkedIn account using the LinkedIn app on your mobile phone or an internet browser. The option on the left takes you to a dedicated mobile app that you have downloaded to your phone. The option on the right takes you to the main LinkedIn website on your phone's internet browser, which is known as a responsive web app. If you've faced a situation like this before, you already understand how dedicated mobile apps and responsive web apps work. Both will give you the same information, in this case about the job posting on LinkedIn, but the experience of using the dedicated mobile app versus the responsive web app on your phone will be different. Let's explore some of the advantages and disadvantages of dedicated mobile apps and responsive web apps. We'll start with the advantages of dedicated mobile apps. With dedicated mobile apps, an internet connection isn't needed after the app is downloaded and installed. Think of some of your favorite gaming apps that you can play on the go or in a plane without Wi-Fi or internet connection. Also, dedicated mobile apps work well with the device's built-in features like a microphone, camera, or location services. This allows for more personalization based on the user's preferences. Finally, you have more freedom in design. When you're designing for a dedicated mobile app, you have more visual and interaction options like gestures and animations. There are also disadvantages to dedicated mobile apps. First, dedicated mobile apps are more expensive to build than responsive web apps. Second, they require a different version based on the mobile device platform they're being built for, Android or iOS. They also have to go through approvals before launching on the App Store for iOS or Google Play for Android. Finally, mobile apps take up space on the device, since they have to be downloaded. Oftentimes, less expensive devices have more limited storage, which can make downloading mobile apps a challenge. Okay, you're learning the ins and outs of dedicated mobile apps. Let's shift our focus now to talk about responsive web apps. What are some of the advantages of responsive web apps? Web apps are faster and cheaper to build than mobile apps, which can save time, resources, and money for your team. Also, web apps run on a mobile phone's web browser. Think of the information you find on the internet using your phone. This allows users to access content without downloading an app first and saves valuable space on a user's phone. Finally, as web apps are responsive, the content can easily be viewed on all devices. Remember, responsive web design allows a website to change automatically depending on the size of the device. However, web apps also have disadvantages. First, using a web app requires an internet connection or cell signal. A user cannot access them offline. This could make your website more difficult to access for the next billion users or for users in remote areas. Second, web apps can be hard for users to find. Even though they show up in search, they are not listed in an app store. Finally, it can be difficult to maintain a responsive web app and make sure it works across all mobile screen sizes. The good news is, you already have experience with designing both of these user experiences. Your first project in the program was designing a mobile app, and your second project was designing a responsive website. Now, as you're bringing all of this knowledge together in your third project, you will have the opportunity to design the best possible user experience for both a mobile app and a web app. Hi, welcome back. You're ready to start the design process for your final portfolio project. As you might remember, the first phase in the design process is to empathize. Empathy is the ability to understand someone else's feelings or thoughts in a situation. You'll conduct research and meet with real users in order to understand their goals, their motivations, their pain points, and the causes of their pain points. Deeply understanding users' needs helps you create well-researched personas that'll lay the groundwork for your product design. This phase of your design work centers around personas, user stories, and user journey maps. You'll use the insights you gain from completing the empathize phase of your work to create a more focused, user-centered design. Ready to enter the empathize phase? Let's get to it. It's time to start creating personas from your user research. In UX design, personas are fictional users whose goals and characteristics represent the needs of a larger group of real users. Although you could write a list of product requirements that are needed to meet the needs of users, giving traits and requirements an identity encourages designers to remember that they're trying to help real people with a real product. Personas turn words and ideas written on paper into users who need your product in their lives. Personas are also one of the most effective ways to give a clear direction to your solutions. Changing a persona can change what you'll design. A great persona includes relevant information about your target user's life. The template for creating personas can include age, education, location, family situation, occupation, goals, and frustrations. You should also consider ability, gender, and race in your personas too. These identifiers give you, as the designer, a more well-rounded idea of who your users are. They also help get you thinking about why these people need your product. By creating well-defined personas, you can stay focused on what your users really need and design specifically for them. Start with a name and an image. Then you can start loading in personal details about the persona's character and some likes or dislikes. You'll need to create at least 2 types of personas for your project in this course. The first persona will be for a user who needs or prefers a dedicated mobile app. And the second persona will be for a user who will be accessing a responsive website from a computer, mobile phone, or other device. When designing for social good, you'll need to create additional personas to represent the diverse needs of the community you're designing for. Even though a persona is a fictional user, everything about them should be based on data or insights from real users. Avoid the temptation to create qualities or traits that you don't find in your research. If a persona you're creating starts to resemble you or your friends, it's a good indication that you need to double-check your work. That's it for now. Coming up, you'll take what you've learned and use it to create your personas. Good luck. You've learned about your users and built personas. Now, let's discuss user stories. A user story is a fictional one-sentence story told from a persona's point of view to inspire and inform design decisions. User stories deepen your ability to connect to your users' needs by prioritizing design goals and inspiring empathetic design decisions. The stories help to expand on the personas you created earlier. You might remember our handy user story formula. Here it is. As a role, I want to action so that benefit. In this formula, the role represents who, the action represents what, and the benefit represents why. And if we've put those pieces together, our user story starts to take shape. A good user story is able to connect the personas you've created to a specific goal that the users would like to accomplish. User stories help UX designers remember the user's perspective and identify potential user pain points. Now it's your chance to create user stories based on the personas you've already developed. You'll want to create one user story for each persona. Now it's time to create user journey maps. As a reminder, a user journey is the series of experiences a user has as they interact with your product to achieve a specific goal. The journey helps UX designers expand on the ideas from the user story. User journey maps help to create obstacle-free paths for your users, reduce the impact of designer bias, highlight new pain points, and identify areas for improvement in your design. With these benefits in mind, we can build the path to map our user's journey. First is step 1. Add each action in their journey until the user reaches their goal. Step 2. Add descriptions for each action. Step 3. Add how the user feels at each point. And finally, step 4. Add opportunities for improvement. Be sure to use your research as your guide. Even if you're a member of the community you want to serve through your design project, always check your assumptions about how the user feels at each point in the user journey. A user journey map helps you frame the user's needs more clearly, which leads to the next step of the design process, defining. But before you can define the user's problem, you need to create user journey maps. So get to it. Hey there. Now that you've worked through the empathize phase of the design process, it's time to put everything you've learned so far into action. You might remember that the second phase of the design process is called the define phase. This is when you use your research from the previous phase to determine specific, solvable pain points for your design. In this stage of the process, you need to propose a specific, measurable product solution that best addresses your user's goals and pain points. As a reminder, a problem statement is a clear description of the user's need that should be addressed. Great problem statements are human-centered while being broad enough to allow for creative freedom and narrow enough to be solved by a design solution. Keeping these qualities in mind will help you create a clear and actionable problem statement. Our problem statement formula is simple. Drawing from our research, we use our persona's name, characteristics, and needs to provide insights into their goals. Problem statements are a succinct way to reference your user's needs and establish the intent of your design. At this stage of your project, you've done the empathizing and identified user pain points, but you need a clear vision that helps you move forward with the design. Problem statements help create that vision. Now it's your turn to define the problems your users are facing. Create a couple of problem statements, and I'll meet up with you after.
Welcome back. Throughout the program, you've received lots of tips, techniques, and words of advice from me and my colleagues about how UX designers incorporate accessibility in different stages of their design work. As we design for social good, we do our best to increase our awareness of the tools that provide greater access to users with various disabilities. But there are still many user experiences that aren't reflected in the usability studies, testing, or other research tools that are commonly used by UX designers. In this video, I'll tell you about the design thinking and planning that went into creating Google's Look to Speak, an app that allows users to complete tasks by selecting pre-written phrases with their eyes. But before we discuss the project, let's focus our attention on user needs. Earlier in the program, you learned about the next billion users, or NBUs, who are the billion people around the world accessing the web for the first time. Well, there's also about the same number of people in the world, 1 billion, who are living with a disability. That's at least 2 billion users who could face serious accessibility or access challenges. So, how do designers and developers address this huge challenge? Well, it starts with one simple approach, which we've covered in the program. When you discover gaps in the user experience, take action to come up with ideas for potential solutions. The product design for Look to Speak started with the understanding that for users with serious speech and motor impairments, accessibility tools like text-to-speech don't go far enough. So an alternative was developed for an assistive app that was based on eye gaze technology and machine learning. Eye gaze, or eye tracking, is an emerging technology that allows users with disabilities a way to interact with the device by using eye movements. The design is innovative, but when it came time to test the prototype, a creative approach was needed. For this challenge, the folks from Google Creative Lab got involved. Google Creative Lab is a team inside the company that finds creative ways to connect users to projects. The Google Creative Lab team sent devices to people living with ALS and cerebral palsy and gave them time to use Look to Speak in their daily lives. For example, the Google Creative Lab partnered with UK-based artist Sarah Ezekiel to test their design and understand the unique pain points for users with motor and speech impairments. Sarah has ALS, a progressive neurodegenerative disease that affects nerve cells in the brain and spinal cord. She is nonverbal and can't use her hands, but eye gaze tech helps her to communicate and create her art. Sarah is one of millions of people worldwide who have speech and motor impairments. As part of testing, the first thing to do was set up the device so Sarah could use it. The app has a built-in program that assists users with mounting the device in the right position so it's at the user's eye level. Once it's mounted, Sarah and other users can select pre-written phrases on the phone screen with their eyes. The phrases Sarah selects are then spoken out loud by the device. Great concept, right? The app also offers tips on how to hold the gaze long enough for the app to register a command. Users need to look in a desired direction until they hear a ping. So what was the takeaway from this project? It's important to test your designs with the users you're trying to serve. For example, one challenge identified by the team during user testing was that the setup helper didn't feature any accessibility tools. Designers and developers use this feedback as a starting point to iterate on the design with the goal of improving its usability. If the team had not tested the product with the users it was designed for, they would have launched a product that didn't fully meet their target users' needs. The Look to Speak experience is a great example of how UX designers should always keep the user front and center in order to truly understand their needs.
So you've just finished the define phase of the design process. Now that you've defined your users' problems, you can start to ideate solutions to solve those problems. During this phase, you'll sketch some ideas for implementations and interfaces that your user can interact with as part of your design solution. This is when you get to put all that research from the first two stages of the design process into action. In this phase, you'll come up with a couple of key deliverables. A competitive audit to check out the strengths and weakness of your competitors. And second, ideation sketches through an exercise called Crazy Eights. During the ideation phase, you might use additional methods to come up with ideas like how might we and storyboards. But we won't focus on those for this portfolio project. Ideation is also the phase where you collaborate more with other team members and do lots of creative brainstorming. Brainstorming and collaborating help UX designers continue to innovate and improve on their designs. When you're designing for social good, it can be helpful to share your early ideas with the community members you're designing for to get feedback and directional guidance. Your design process for this project might be more participatory because you want to ensure the ideas you've come up with solve the real problems your users are facing. So, are you ready to start ideating? Let's go. Before we kick off the ideation process, let's first do a competitive audit. As a refresher, a competitive audit is an overview of your competitors' strengths and weaknesses. These audits collect information about what your competitors are doing, including what techniques are working for them and what techniques are not. Competitive audits present you with more possibilities for solving your problem statement, and they give you some strategic insights for planning the next steps of your design. It's important to learn more about your product's competitors before you start to ideate on your own product designs. Competitive audits also help you understand what user needs are already being met in the marketplace and how your design can improve on current solutions. The first step is to outline the goals for your competitive audit. This should include specific information about your product, your users, and the product's industry. The second step is to create a list of your competitors. You can do this using a document or spreadsheet. The third step is to identify the specific features of your competitors that you want to focus on. Then fourth, you'll research each product. You'll use your list of competitors and specific features to guide your research about their products and organizations. Fifth, you'll analyze your findings. Try to identify patterns and gaps in your research findings. This is where you use data to reach conclusions about your competitors. And finally, during the sixth step, you'll summarize your findings and conclusions in a report or presentation. Keep in mind, if your app and website serve a community need that has not been met before, it may be difficult to find direct competitors. If this happens for your project, look for more indirect competitors, like organizations with a similar goal serving other communities. Great. Now it's time for you to complete a competitive audit. Have fun scoping out the competition. Scoping out the competition can help you start to come up with creative solutions for your problem statement. Before you get too far into the ideation phase, you need to make a decision about which device or screen size you'll design for first. Why? Well, most designers prefer to start designing for one device or screen size and get that design through the high-fidelity prototype stage before moving to a second device. Designing for one screen size first allows you to validate your product design, establish a clear user flow, and make decisions about the visual design of your product before moving forward. The insights you gain from working on the first device will enhance your designs for the second device. Let's discuss some of the questions that UX designers ask themselves when evaluating which device to design for first. To get started, ask yourself, where are your users located geographically? For example, if you're designing for a user that's located in an emerging market, they're probably more likely to access your product on a mobile phone rather than a desktop computer. In this case, you'd want to take a mobile-first approach to your design process. Second, where will users be when they access your product? At home? At school? At work? Or on the go? For example, imagine you're designing a math tutoring product for middle school students. The student's experience with your product design will be very different if they're at home using a laptop computer, at school using a desktop computer, or on the go using a mobile phone. You'll need to determine which of these contexts you'd like to optimize your designs for. Third, how reliable is your user's internet access, cellular access, or Wi-Fi signal? For example, do your users live in a place where internet access is available but slow? Or do they live in a more remote location where there is no internet access at all? In either of these cases, choosing to design a mobile app first makes more sense, as it could be downloaded when they have access and then used in offline mode. Considering the answers to these questions for your product and target user will help you determine which device to design for first. For the purposes of this course, you'll design a dedicated mobile app first, followed by your responsive website. Following this order will allow all of us to learn together as we go through this course. It's an exciting time in the design process. It's time to start sketching. Sketching is all about exploring lots of ideas at a rapid pace so you can think creatively with no limits. You'll use the problem statement you created earlier to ideate with a Crazy 8s exercise. Let's go over the setup for Crazy 8s in case you need a refresher. Grab a large sheet of paper and a pen or pencil. Fold it in half. Then fold it in half again. Then in half one more time. Open it back up. Now you've got 8 spaces for 8 different ideas. Sometimes I like to draw lines on the folds of the paper to make the 8 spaces clearer. Okay, now make sure you have your problem statement available to guide your ideation. Then start your timer for 60 seconds. Don't forget to stick to those 1-minute intervals for each of the 8 ideas you're sketching. The goal here is quantity, not quality, and you may also think of new approaches that you had never considered before. Okay, you're ready to kick off some quick ideation now. You'll use basic shapes to represent what your website and app could look like on a desktop or mobile device. Remember, designers often use a simple rectangle or square to represent a photo, rectangles for buttons, circles for icons, and lines for text. The goal of the Crazy 8s exercise is to come up with rough sketches of your future product, in this case, a dedicated mobile app. You'll take some of the ideas you come up with during this exercise and use them in your wireframes later. The only limit with this technique is the time allotted, so push yourself to be as creative as possible. So have fun and get sketching. All right, great job so far. You began a new project designing for social good. You've worked through the empathy, design, and ideate phases of the design process. Let's take a brief pause to reflect on all you've done in this part of the course. You started by learning about progressive enhancement and graceful degradation, which are approaches you can take to designing across devices and products. Next, I shared a little bit about how Google focuses on the user in all of our work. Then, we discussed how to design across devices and screen sizes. To help you design seamless user experiences across devices, you'll need to keep the 4 C's in mind: consistency, continuity, context, and complementary. You were also introduced to the differences between dedicated mobile apps and responsive web apps. With all of this new knowledge, you began your portfolio project from the very beginning. You started with the EMPATHIZE phase, where you created personas, user stories, and user journey maps. Then you moved on to the define phase, where you identified the user need your project will focus on by building a problem statement. Finally, you made your way into the ideate phase and came up with ideas for your dedicated mobile app design through sketching. Now you're ready to create wireframes. As you move into the next part of the course, remember to keep your user front and center. Meeting users' needs should always be your top priority. Gather up all your supplies and let's start working on wireframes. Welcome back. In this part of the course, you'll take everything you've learned about the user problem you're trying to solve and come up with a basic version of your dedicated mobile app. You'll start by creating paper wireframes to come up with lots of ideas for your dedicated mobile app. Then, you'll take the best parts of your paper wireframes and create digital wireframes in Figma or Adobe XD. After that, you'll turn your digital wireframes into a low-fidelity prototype. With your lo-fi prototype ready to go, it'll be time to get some feedback about your designs from real people. You'll plan a usability study, conduct a usability study, and analyze and synthesize your research results. Finally, you'll make changes to your designs based on insights from your research. Ready to get started? Let's go. Hi again. Earlier, you created sketches to come up with ideas for the design of your project. Now, it's time to use those sketches to create wireframes for your dedicated mobile app. You might remember that a wireframe is an outline or sketch of a product or a screen. Wireframes help designers figure out how a page is arranged. Wireframes also help designers envision how each feature of a product fits with the others, and how the product will likely be used. There are two ways to create wireframes: paper and digital. Designers usually start with paper wireframes to plan the initial direction of the design. Later, these paper wireframes are turned into digital wireframes to refine and build out the entire user flow. Platforms like Figma and Adobe XD are great for this. Wireframes are the foundation of your app's interface. So, it's important to think carefully about how you create your wireframes and to come up with lots of ideas for your wires before deciding on one direction for your design. But before you begin your first wireframes for your dedicated mobile app, be sure to consider your app's information architecture. Creating information architecture is an important part of UX design for many reasons. First and foremost, IA organizes and defines the overall structure for the app or site. Second, it provides a high-level view of a product. As a UX designer, you need to understand how the elements of a product fit together and relate to each other in order to create the design of that product. Third, IA helps stakeholders review your designs. Stakeholders can evaluate whether the content in the site or app is the correct type of content, and if it's placed in the appropriate places to help achieve business or product goals. Strong IA also helps engineers understand how to organize the data, so the eventual development of the product matches the visual designs you've created. So not only will your users benefit from good IA, it will make your colleagues' jobs easier too. Finally, an information architecture that's flexible allows your ideas to grow and iterate with the design. The ability to adapt your approach at different stages of a project is one of a UX designer's most necessary skills. For example, you should group your information architecture in a way that allows you to add additional categories in the future. So, take a moment to think through your app's information architecture to organize the structure of the screens you're about to sketch. Then, you'll be ready to get started with paper wireframes. Let's get into paper wireframes. As a quick refresher, a wireframe is an outline or a sketch of a product or screen. Wireframes are made up of lines and simple shapes. Paper wireframes are useful because they're simple hand drawings that establish the basic structure of a page and highlight the intended function of each element. The best part about wireframes is that you only need a piece of paper and a pen or pencil to make one. So why do UX designers create paper wireframes? They're fast, inexpensive, allow you to explore lots of ideas, and help narrow your focus on the best parts of the wireframe you draw. With all of these benefits in mind, are you ready to get started with creating your own paper wireframes? If so, there are 4 simple steps to drawing your wireframes. First, write a quick list of the information that needs to go on the page you're wireframing. Second, draw at least 5 different versions of how to structure information on the page. Third, review the different versions of your wireframe to help you refine it. Add a star next to the pieces you like the most. And fourth, choose the parts of your wireframe you want to explore further in a digital wireframe. Great, you're all done. Sketching on paper is a great way to refine your early ideas. It's important to keep an open mind to a variety of design approaches. So, use this time to identify the features and layouts you like best. And be sure to take photos of your paper wireframes to include in your portfolio, so you can showcase your full design process. You don't need to be a great artist or illustrator to take full advantage of paper wireframes. Just a little bit of practice can get you comfortable with using a few simple lines to convey complex ideas. Using pen and paper enables you to visually explore many concepts and to evaluate and iterate quickly without getting too invested in perfect-looking pixels on a screen. Once you've got your ideas on paper, it's time to create digital wireframes, which we'll cover in the next video. We just covered the basics of paper wireframes, and you created paper wireframes for your own project. They're a great starting point for designs. Now you're ready to turn your paper wireframes into a more advanced digital version of your project. Digital wireframes are outlines or sketches of a product created with digital software. The goal of digital wireframes is to add enough detail to your product that users can understand its basic features and navigation. Compared to the quick and messy process of creating a paper wireframe, digital wireframes focus on a cleaner, structured design. Digital wireframes allow designers to explore how a product will function and how a user will move through the flow without having to design every detail. Designers also use digital wireframes because they're easier to share than paper wireframes. Sharing a link to a design takes a lot less time than making paper photocopies and mailing them. Earlier in the certificate program, we created digital wireframes using Figma and Adobe XD and provided resources on both tools. Whether you use Figma or Adobe XD to create your project in this course is up to you. Whichever tool you use, remember these tips when building digital wireframes. First, identify some key features and details from your paper wireframes that you can carry over into a digital version. During brainstorming and sketching, you've probably gone through a few versions of your app's layout. Pull from those sketches to start crafting the digital wireframes you'd like to test. Next, use actual content for important pieces of text in your digital wireframes instead of placeholder text, like lorem ipsum. Labeling essential features like a menu or the next button helps users understand how to navigate the wireframe. And finally, wait to add expressive content, like color and images. You'll add those elements when you create mockups. Now it's your turn to create digital wireframes for your dedicated mobile app. Remember to keep it simple and focus on the structure of each page and how the pages fit together, not the details. Congrats! You've created wireframes for your dedicated mobile app. Now you're ready to build a low-fidelity prototype of your design. As a refresher, a prototype is an early model of a product that demonstrates functionality. The goal of prototyping is to identify and solve problems related to the function of your app. Later, you'll get a chance to test your prototype with real people and receive feedback to improve your designs. When you're designing your dedicated mobile app in this course, you can use Figma or Adobe XD. Since each platform provides its own unique set of abilities, the choice is really up to you. To create low-fidelity prototypes, you don't need to outline and link all of the screens in your app. Instead, you should focus on defining layouts and interactions for the specific user flow you want to test. Once you're satisfied with your prototype, you can start the testing phase to get feedback that will inform its high-fidelity version. Keep in mind, this is the first draft of your design. You might feel like you need to perfect your prototype here, but the testing phase is meant to identify problems you didn't anticipate while designing. So it's important not to get too focused on trying to find every single problem. That's it for now. In the next video, you'll start planning a UX research study to test your low-fidelity prototype. Welcome back. So before you carry out a usability study, you have to create a research plan. Your plan will define what you'll test and measure, and how it relates to your project. Your research plan is the foundation of your research study. A research plan organizes and outlines every part of your upcoming usability study from start to finish. If your plan is created well, you're more likely to get valuable research results that you can use to improve your designs. There are 7 elements in a UX research study plan. Let's go over them together. The first element is the project background, which summarizes the situation that made this research necessary. Basically, it's a brief explanation about why you're doing the research, which you can give to anyone who asks. Second is the research goals, Here, you lay out what you're trying to solve with this design, or what you'd like the outcomes of the research to be. The goals of your research will be different from project to project. Third, write detailed research questions for your project. These are the questions you plan to answer during the study. The research questions should be actionable and specific, and you should avoid leading questions. But keep in mind that these should not be the literal questions you plan to ask study participants. Fourth, identify your key performance indicators, or KPIs, which are the critical measures of progress toward an end goal. To do this, ask yourself this question: what's a sign that we're making progress toward our ultimate goal? Fifth is the methodology, where you outline the steps you plan to take in your research, including how you'll collect and analyze data. Sixth is determining who your study participants will be. Here, you need to figure out who needs to be involved in the research to help you study the right metrics. Since your current project focuses on designing for social good, you might want to consider including study participants who are members of the community you're trying to serve. And finally, you'll need to write a script for your study, or the questions you'll ask participants during your research. This is also known as the discussion guide. After creating a UX research plan that includes these 7 elements, you'll be all set to test the main user flow of your dedicated mobile app. If you need more guidance, check out the course readings and revisit the videos from an earlier course. Otherwise, get ready to create your own research plan. Hey there! We just explored how to plan a study. Now it's time to review how to do the research. Let's get started. For this course, you'll conduct a usability study to get feedback about your low-fidelity prototype. A usability study is a research method that helps us understand how easy it is for participants to do core tasks in a product. UX designers use insights from the study to improve their designs. There are 2 types of usability studies: moderated and unmoderated. In moderated usability studies, a moderator guides participants through the study in real time. The moderator in these studies asks specific questions, follows up in real time, and builds a dialogue with the participants. In unmoderated usability studies, the participants test prototypes without a moderator present. Usually, the study is recorded on video and the UX team reviews the footage after the study. At this point in the course, you're ready to conduct the first usability study for your project, focused on your low-fidelity prototype. Conducting a usability study at this point in the design process is beneficial because your design is less complex, which means it's less expensive to make changes. But remember that the UX design process is all about iteration. So later in the course, you'll have the option to conduct another usability study about your high-fidelity prototype too. One more thing. Determining the size of your study depends on the project, but around 5 to 8 participants is a good start. It's a large enough sample size to gather real data, but it's not so large that the study costs a lot of money or takes a long time. If you'd like to review a usability study in more detail, check out the course readings. And that's it for the second step of a UX research study, conducting the research. You're ready to gather feedback about your own designs from real participants. It's the moment of truth. Welcome back. During a usability study, you'll receive a lot of feedback from participants, and I mean a lot. Be prepared to make changes to your designs or even rework an entire screen. That's totally normal. In order to determine the changes to make in your designs, you'll need to complete the third step of a UX research study: analyzing and synthesizing the research results. Analyzing the results from your research is all about turning observations into actionable insights. As a quick refresher, an insight is an observation that helps you understand the user or their needs from a new perspective. In other words, insights help explain what data means and what to do with it. This process of turning observations into insights can be completed in just 4 steps. First, gather all of the data from the usability study in one place. This includes everything from the observations you quickly scribbled on sticky notes to the notes you took in Google Docs or Sheets. Be sure to check with your team and gather any notes they might have taken too. Next, organize the data. If you wrote your observations on sticky notes, you might use a method called affinity diagramming to organize your data. Or if you use spreadsheets for note-taking, you've already started organizing the data without even realizing it. Each method is reliable, so it's entirely up to you how to organize your data. After you organize your data, you're ready to find themes. One of the key goals of user research is to identify themes or patterns that are common among participants. To do this, we'll ask ourselves 2 key questions. What common patterns stand out in the data you collected? And what do these patterns tell you about your product design? Once you recognize the themes, it's easier to turn the observations into something actionable. Finally, come up with insights based on the themes. Strong insights are grounded in real data and answer the research questions from your plan. Depending on the amount of data you've collected, you should be able to come up with a few different themes and insights. Now it's your turn to analyze the observations from your own usability study and come up with insights. Put your thinking cap on. You've just completed the steps in a UX research study: planning your research, conducting a usability study, and analyzing your research findings. In this video, I'll go over how to modify your low-fidelity prototype based on the insights you developed. So why do we do this? Conducting research, like a usability study, helps us identify the pain points that participants experience with different prototypes. Each time we learn about a pain point, there's an opportunity to update the design and make the experience better for users. That way, the issues can be fixed before the final product launches. It's helpful to prioritize your research insights from the most urgent to the least urgent. You'll likely do this prioritization with project stakeholders like a fellow designer, the product manager, or an engineering lead. There are a few insights that should be considered a priority 0, or P0, which means they must be fixed for your product to work. Users of all abilities, identities, and experiences need to be able to successfully move through your product's design. If there were any parts of your design that were inequitable or inaccessible, you need to fix them now. This is particularly important for your current project, since you're focused on designing for social good. In addition, if there was a part of the design that prevented the user from completing the main user flow, or if there were any places where the user felt tricked, those insights are P0s to address too. After you identify your P0 insights, you'll likely have a lot of insights left to take action on. These insights can be categorized into buckets based on their priority. In addition to priority 0, you might have buckets called priority 1 and priority 2. Whether you've been creating your wireframes and low-fidelity prototype in Figma or Adobe XD, it's time to jump back into your designs and make updates. Don't be afraid to make big changes to improve the user experience in your app. Good luck.
When you apply what you've learned through this program to the real world, you'll realize just how impactful the work you do as a UX designer can be. In this video, I'll share some of the ways that Google has used our products to respond to crises around the world. Here at Google, we realize the important role we play in facilitating communication across the globe. Every day, we aim to make the world's information universally accessible and useful. When our users experience moments of crisis, our mission to help keep people informed is even more critical. To keep communication open in times of crisis, we partner with those on the front lines. There are 2 products that Google uses to keep the world informed of events happening around them: SOS alerts and public alerts. Creating something so impactful at scale requires highly involved UX thinking at every level. Let's break this down. We started off by defining the problem. What can Google do to keep people informed in times of crisis? And what constitutes as a crisis? Then we ideated, prototyped, and tested potential solutions. Our designers needed to think about everything, including how quickly users could find this critical information, where this information could be integrated, and how to create an accessible and strategic content strategy that provides users with the information they need. Going through the design process led us to determine that we needed two different alert types: SOS alerts and public alerts. Here's a quick overview of each. SOS alerts aim to make emergency information more accessible during a crisis. When a location is affected by a natural disaster or an emergency event, an SOS alert is pushed to devices in that area. By using relevant and authoritative content from the web, social media, and Google products, we keep people informed of crises. We also highlight critical information on Google products like search and maps to help inform the rest of the world. We include important emergency phone numbers and websites, evacuation maps, translations of useful phrases, donation opportunities, safety tips, and detailed visualizations of the crisis. Separately, public alerts uses data from official sources to improve user awareness of potential risks in their area. Public alerts provide early warnings about severe weather, storms, and other crises, and allow local authorities to advise the public on how to stay safe before, during, and after an event. Through partnerships with local and national authorities, Google provides important updates and keeps the lines of communication open to citizens. UX designers play an important role in bringing this work to life. By providing users with early warnings and critical information during crises, Google is keeping the world informed and providing users with information on the best ways to stay safe.
Hello again. You've made a lot of progress on your third project. In this part of the course, you started by creating paper wireframes to come up with lots of ideas for your dedicated mobile app. Then you took the best parts of your paper wireframes and created digital wireframes. After that, you turned your digital wireframes into a low-fidelity prototype. At that point, you were ready to get some feedback about your designs from real people. You planned a usability study, conducted a usability study, and analyzed and synthesized your research results. Finally, you made changes to your designs based on insights from your research. Up next, you'll continue to work on your dedicated mobile app. You'll bring your low-fidelity designs to life by creating mockups and a high-fidelity prototype. I hope you're looking forward to completing your dedicated mobile app focused on designing for social good. Welcome back. By this point in the course, you've created wireframes and low-fidelity prototypes for the dedicated mobile app portion of your final project. I hope you've been enjoying designing for social good and are having ongoing conversations with the community you're designing for. Now you're ready to move into high-fidelity design. You'll build new iterations of your designs that incorporate visual design elements like typography, color, and iconography. You'll also create a high-fidelity prototype with more complex interactions and animations. Here's a more detailed preview of what's to come in this part of the course. To kick things off, you'll start by designing mockups for your dedicated mobile app. You'll continue to design the platform of your choice, Figma or Adobe XD. Along the way, you'll save elements and components in your design system. This way, you can use the components and colors from your dedicated mobile app again when you design a responsive website in the next part of the course. Then you'll turn your mockups into a high-fidelity prototype. Finally, you'll have the option to plan and conduct a usability study to gather feedback about your high-fidelity prototype. You'll analyze and synthesize the observations from your usability study to come up with actionable insights to improve your designs. And you'll iterate on your high-fidelity designs based on the insights from your research. I'd recommend that you conduct a usability study of your high-fidelity prototype if you had a lot of feedback and made many changes to your designs in the low-fidelity phase. You might also want to test the visual design of your product to understand whether or not it resonates with the community you've been designing for. In this part of the course, your basic, black and white, low-fidelity designs will come to life with details and color. I really enjoy this part of the design process because I can start to really imagine how my designs will serve real users. I'll continue to guide you each step of the way. So if you're ready, let's get started. Hi there. Earlier in the course, you created wireframes for your dedicated mobile app. Now it's time to bring your designs to life using visual design elements and adding more details. And the best way to do that is with a mockup. As a reminder, mockups are static, high-fidelity designs used as a representation of a final product. Keep in mind, going from a wireframe to a mockup should not feel like a paint-by-number exercise. For example, it's okay to place an image in a different part of your mockup design than you planned for in your wireframe. You should build your mockups in the same tool you use to build your wireframes and low-fidelity prototype. It's a best practice to place a copy of your digital wires above the area where you plan to create your mockups so you can easily reference them. Mockups include visual and UI elements, so UX designers and their collaborators can get a better idea about the final state of the website or app. Mockups are not clickable or highly interactive, which means they can be used to make multiple iterations without affecting the functionality. Let's explore the differences between wireframes and mockups in a bit more detail. Here's an example from an earlier course when my colleagues were working on the homepage of the dog walker app in Figma. On the left, the wireframes are static images that give us an overview of the page layout and hierarchy. You'll notice that the wireframes outline the content without providing a lot of detail or color. On the right, the mockup of the homepage includes typography, color, and iconography. These elements make it easier to map out the user flow and can help UX designers visualize the user journey in a more dynamic way. As you start creating your own mockups, there are a few visual design elements you'll want to include. The first one is typography. Typography is the practice of arranging text and typefaces, also known as fonts, to make language legible, readable, and visually appealing. Typography can help add hierarchy to your designs, make text easy to read, and add visual style. You'll also use color in your mockups. As you design, think about the messages that certain colors communicate, how people understand color, and how colors mix, match, or contrast with one another. In addition, you'll probably want to include a few icons in your mockups. Iconography refers to the images or symbols associated with a subject or idea. Think about the hamburger icon that's often used for navigation in apps. It's really just 3 stacked horizontal lines, but most people know that this icon indicates there's a menu you can open up for more navigation options. You also need to think about layouts, which are ways to arrange elements on a page. Layouts usually refer to the specific placement of text, style, icons, and images. The goal of layouts is to present information in a logical way, making the important elements stand out. Without a thoughtful layout, your app designs will be difficult for users to interact with. Finally, keep in mind the visual design principles that you learned about earlier, like emphasis, hierarchy, scale and proportion, and unity and variety. These principles help inform your design decisions. Adhering to them can lead users to have a more positive experience with your mobile app. If any of these terms or concepts are unfamiliar, you can review materials from earlier in the certificate program, which are linked in the course readings. Awesome! You're ready to create your own mockups. Remember to share your designs in the discussion forum to get some quick feedback from your peers. Hello again. Now that you know how to go from wireframes to mockups, it's time to start defining your design system. A lot goes into creating mockups, and you'll need a way to save and reuse the design elements and components you'll use. This is where having a design system can really help. As you might remember, a design system is a series of reusable visual elements that allow teams to design and develop a product quickly and consistently, following predetermined brand standards. At this stage of the design process, one of your goals is to document the decisions you're making about your visual designs. This means documenting the font, colors, layout, text, illustrations, iconography, animation, and other visual elements that your product includes as part of your design system. So why should you use a design system for your current project? When you're designing across devices, having a good design system set up can save you lots of time. If you save your preferences as you go, you won't need to make new decisions about a color or style choice each time you adjust your mockup. You can simply copy the element or component you already created and use it again in the new design. Design systems also help keep your designs consistent, and having consistent designs help ensure a uniform user experience across devices and products. For example, you want to use the same style of buttons and the same font in the dedicated mobile app you're designing now and in the responsive website you'll design later. Creating a design system for your project is a little different depending on the tool you're using. If you're designing in Figma, you'll need to create a sticker sheet. And if you're working in Adobe XD, you can use the Assets panel. If you need more information about how to build your design system, you can revisit demonstration videos from earlier in the program. In addition to creating your own small design system, it can be useful to leverage an external organization's design system. For example, downloading a UI kit from Google or any other company can help you get a head start on your designs. You'll have buttons, navigation bars, icons, and more that you can easily customize to meet the needs of your own designs. Awesome. Now it's time for you to create a design system in the tool you're using. Have fun. With your mockups ready to go, it's time to create the high-fidelity prototype of your dedicated mobile app. You're getting close to having a final product that can benefit the community you've chosen to serve. Do you remember the steps to create a high-fidelity prototype that were introduced earlier in the program? As a quick refresher, they are: 1. Lay out the mockups in the order of the main user flow. 2. Connect the screens or elements within the screens. 3. Add interaction details. In both Figma and Adobe XD, the trigger defines what type of interaction will cause the prototype to advance forward. You'll probably stick to interactions like tap for your dedicated mobile app or mouse click for your responsive website later. 4. Adjust the animation. Remember, the animation settings determine how the prototype moves from one screen to the other. 5. Complete this process for all of the screens in your dedicated mobile app. So, why would you create a high-fidelity prototype? Well, the main reason is that hi-fi prototypes give you the opportunity to test your app designs with users. Testing helps you decide how to refine your mockups based on the feedback that users provide. And testing proves whether the potential solution you've been designing addresses the community problem you're trying to solve. All right, that's it for our quick refresher on high-fidelity prototypes. Go ahead and turn your mockups into a high-fidelity prototype now. I know you can do it. I bet the high-fidelity prototype of your dedicated mobile app is coming together nicely. So it's time to put your prototype to the test. You're about to conduct a usability study. As you know by now, a usability study is a technique used to evaluate a product by testing it on users. You've already conducted a usability study to get feedback about your low-fidelity prototype of the app. Now you have the option to plan and conduct a usability study to gather feedback about your high-fidelity prototype. While the choice is yours, I'd recommend that you conduct a usability study of your high-fidelity prototype if you had a lot of feedback and made changes to your designs in the low-fidelity phase. You might also want to test the visual design of your product to understand whether or not it resonates with the community you've been designing for. And if you aren't already convinced, research shows that usability is key for the success of mobile apps. Common trends among successful mobile phone apps are that users feel they are easy to learn, user-friendly, and make completing tasks quicker. Even though designers agree mobile app usability is important, there's not a single list of guidelines to follow to create a mobile app. Instead, the best way to test the usability of a mobile app is through a usability study. Because you recently conducted a usability study on your low-fidelity prototype, I'm just going to quickly remind you of how this process works. First, you'll plan the study, which includes 7 elements. Second, you'll conduct a study, which could be moderated or unmoderated. Third, you'll analyze and synthesize the observations you collected during the study. Remember, the goal here is to turn your observations into insights. And finally, you'll iterate on your designs based on the insights that your research uncovered. If you'd like a refresher on any of these steps, please go back to the earlier course material. Now, before you conduct your study, I'd like to share a few things to consider when conducting usability studies on hi-fi prototypes for dedicated mobile apps. These are some insider tips based on my years of experience in the field. First, it's helpful to brainstorm interaction issues that users may have with the product and then test those interactions. Since you've added more complex interactions in your high-fidelity prototype, like overlays and motion, you want to make sure they're working correctly. Second, it's important to test your prototype on the correct platform and mobile app screen size. For example, if you designed your app for Apple iOS and its platform-specific interactions, don't test it on Android phones or with Android users who may be unable to easily use that platform. In addition, it's important to verify that your app meets all the platform requirements. You don't want to design an experience that's incompatible with its conventions and user expectations. Third, spend some extra time thinking about who your study participants will be. Since you're designing an app focused on social good, you should probably include study participants who are members of the community you're trying to serve. They can give you authentic and direct feedback about whether your designs meet the real needs of the community and if they're able to use your product effectively. Whether you conduct a moderated or unmoderated usability study, be sure to take lots of notes and carefully record feedback from participants. Remember what you've already learned about spreadsheet note-taking and put your skills to the test during this final usability study. So now, you have the chance to plan and conduct your own usability study in order to get feedback about the high-fidelity prototype of your app. Keep an open mind and be ready to make changes to your designs. Congratulations! You've finished the designs for your dedicated mobile app. You're halfway done with this portfolio project. Let's recap all of the progress you made in this section of the course. You started by designing mockups for your dedicated mobile app in either Figma or Adobe XD. Along the way, you saved elements and components in your design system so that they are ready to use when you start to build your responsive website. Then, you turned your mockups into a high-fidelity prototype. Finally, you had the option to conduct a usability study to gather feedback about your high-fidelity prototype. If you chose to complete the usability study, you planned the study, conducted the study, and analyzed and synthesized your observations. You even iterated on your high-fidelity designs based on the insights from your research. And just like that, you finished designing your dedicated mobile app for social good. In the real world, you'd be handing these designs off to engineering to develop before releasing the mobile app. But for now, it's on to design a responsive website to pair with your app. You're getting so close to finishing your third portfolio project and being able to apply to UX design jobs. Keep up the good work. Welcome back. You've just completed designing your dedicated mobile app. Congratulations. Now it's time to take what you've learned about your product and your users and apply that to design a responsive website for social good. As a reminder, responsive web design means creating changes to the appearance or layout of a website, depending on the device being used to view it and the size of the screen. As a UX designer planning a website, you'll need to consider how the elements on each page will appear on different size screens. At the beginning of this part of the course, you'll learn how to design for different experiences and screen sizes. Next, you'll review the importance of information architecture and create a sitemap for your website. You'll also sketch ideas and potential layouts for your website. You'll build wireframes, on paper, digitally, or both, for different size screens. And you'll develop a low-fidelity prototype and test it through a usability study to improve your designs. Then, you'll move into high-fidelity designs. You'll create mockups for different size screens of your responsive website. Finally, you'll create a high-fidelity prototype of your responsive website and test it one more time. This will be your final chance to iterate on your designs and improve the user experience in your product. By the time you finish this section of the course, you will have a responsive website to go along with your dedicated app. Your final portfolio project will be complete. So without further ado, let's get going. Let's take a moment to remember where we are in the design process. You've just completed the high-fidelity prototype for your dedicated mobile app focused on social good. But that was just the first half of your portfolio project. You're not finished yet. Coming up, you'll be utilizing what you've created for your dedicated mobile app to design a corresponding responsive website. At this point in the design process, it's important to review the designs you've built for your app and think about how they can inform the design of the responsive website you're about to create. Many designers find it easier to tackle one project, like a dedicated mobile app, and take it through to the hi-fi prototype stage before beginning a design for another experience, like a responsive website. Creating one experience at a time allows designers to learn all they can about users' needs and pain points before beginning a new design on a separate device. It also gives designers the opportunity to set up a design system based on a tested product that can be reused in the new designs. In the end, designing for one experience first can save time and money and make the overall process easier to manage. When you designed your dedicated mobile app, you considered many different user needs and pain points so you could better understand the perspectives of the community members you're designing for. You also collected feedback through a usability study. When you design a responsive website, you'll consider some of the same user needs and build on some of your earlier learnings. But designing this new experience will also require you to think about different user needs or pain points, now that they're using your product on a different device and in a different context. The use case is important here. A use case is how users would experience your product design when trying to complete a task. You'll need to consider the use case for the responsive website you're designing, compared to the dedicated mobile app you just completed. Let's use a real example to help bring this concept to life. The American Red Cross is a nonprofit organization committed to alleviating human suffering in the face of emergencies by mobilizing the power of volunteers and the generosity of donors. Their website educates users about their mission, explains how to get involved, and drives donations. In other words, the use case for the Red Cross website is to educate and involve users. The Red Cross also has a mobile app. The use case for the app is very different. The use case focuses on driving blood donations. On the dedicated mobile app, users can find a location to give blood, schedule an appointment, manage an existing appointment, and review the impact of their donations over time. With the website and the dedicated mobile app side by side, you'll notice that the look and feel of the brand across platforms is similar. For example, they draw attention to the buttons using the color red. That's one of the ways you know that you're interacting with a Red Cross product. For your project in this course, not everything that your dedicated mobile app needed will be important for the design of your website. Focus on defining your use case for the website as a distinct and different experience. Once you know your use case for the responsive website, you'll also have to choose which screen size to design for first. To do this, you'll need to determine who the product is being designed for. For example, if the target user for your website is millennials or the next billion users, you may want to design your website for a mobile phone screen first. Or if your target users are knowledge workers who use the website in a business context, designing for a laptop or desktop first may be appropriate. Good research can inform this important choice. In the real world, to determine which screen size of a responsive website you'll design first, you'll research the device that your users are most likely to use. But for the sake of this course and your current portfolio project, you're going to assume that your users are more active on mobile phones than other devices. You'll design for a mobile phone screen size first and work your way up to larger screen sizes. This will allow me to better support you as you go through this course. But now it's time for you to examine use cases for the dedicated mobile app and responsive website you're designing. Good luck. As we begin talking about the different ways that you can create responsive websites, let's review the importance of information architecture. To refresh your memory, information architecture, or IA, is the framework of a website, how it's organized, categorized, and structured. In other words, IA is the structured organization of content to help users understand where the information they want is located. Effective information architecture is key to creating a seamless user journey. So why is creating information architecture an important part of UX design? Good IA makes content easy to find and makes a product easy to use. In addition, strong IA allows your ideas to grow and change with the design. The ability to adapt your approach during different stages of a project is a key skill for UX designers. Let's put IA into context with a real-world example for an e-commerce website. Imagine you've made a purchase from a website and you're waiting to receive your product, but the thing you've paid for never arrives. How do you feel? Maybe you're annoyed, but you're also curious about the status of the package. You go to the order page on the website, and there's no obvious place to see the order status or to report a lost package. You eventually find the help section, so you look for contact information. But there's no easy way to find an email, a phone number, or a link to send an inquiry about your missing order. At this point, you're probably feeling confused, frustrated, even angry. The struggle to find customer service information is just one example of why establishing good information architecture is an important step in your design process. It creates a clear pathway for users to get what they want from a product. As you think about designing your website, it's important that you consider how your information will be accessed by your users. Our job as designers is to understand and anticipate our users' needs in order to provide them with product experiences that meet those needs. Imagine you went to an amusement park specifically to see the brand new attraction everyone's talking about, but you couldn't find it, even after walking around for hours. It's not good enough to build an awesome roller coaster or provide the desired functionality through some feature. If people can't find what they're searching for, understand the terminology, or navigate a product's hierarchy, the feature or ride might as well not exist. Now that you understand the importance of information architecture, let's put this into action for your own website design. Coming up, we'll revisit how to build a sitemap. With everything we just discussed about information architecture in mind, it's time to create a sitemap for your responsive website. Remember, a sitemap is a diagram of a website or an app that shows how pages are prioritized, linked, and labeled. Sitemaps are a great way to review all of the pages you'll need to design for your website. Building an effective sitemap also allows you to identify unnecessary pages or spot gaps where you need to create a new page. So how do you create a sitemap for your responsive website? There are 6 steps. First, think about pages that are commonly found on websites. This is the research part of creating a sitemap. It's helpful to check out the websites of your direct and indirect competitors, or revisit the learnings from your competitive audit. For this project, you might also want to check out the websites of large nonprofits or other organizations that drive social good. Take note of common pages that those websites include, such as a page to describe the organization's mission, a page to drive donations, or a list of the organization's locations. Second, recall information about users. You'll want to keep your users' problems and goals in mind as you create your sitemap to ensure that users get what they need from your site. To do so, revisit the information you collected during the EMPATHIZE phase of this project through empathy maps, personas, user stories, and user journey maps. You learned a lot about the users you're designing this project for, and many of those learnings should be relevant to your responsive website. Third,
decide on a website structure. What structure will your website use? Sequential, hierarchical, matrix, or database? Remember, you might use a combination of these structures or a different structure altogether. Let's review the first two, which are the most popular choices. As a quick reminder, sequential describes a website structure that leads a user through a step-by-step process. And a hierarchical structure describes a website that's organized by importance. Hierarchical is also the most common type of sitemap, so you'll likely use some variation of a hierarchical website structure for this project. Okay, back to the steps to create a sitemap. After deciding the structure for your website, it's time to start creating the sitemap. You should start with the home page of your sitemap. The home page is the access point for your website and the first part of your product that users will experience. In addition, the home page is often placed at the top of a sitemap, so it's a logical place to begin. From the sitemap, you can name the main categories of content on your website. Remember, for a website, these categories usually appear in a navigation bar at the top of the home page or in a hamburger menu. For this project, your main categories might include things like an about page or a donation page. And finally, you can add subcategories. This is when the final details of your sitemap will come together. In other words, you'll add subcategories that connect from each of the main categories you just outlined. Remember, these are also called child pages that are attached to a parent page. As you consider how to place the subcategories, think about the user flow through your website and the navigation you want to create. And just like that, you will have a sitemap for your website. This sitemap will give you a general idea of how your responsive website will function and the ways that it will meet your users' needs. Now you have the opportunity to create a sitemap for the responsive website you're designing. Think logically and keep the user flow through your design in mind. Welcome back. You've created some of the structural elements, like a sitemap, that will serve as the foundation for your responsive website. Now it's time to come up with lots of ideas for the layout of your site through sketching. There are a few things to think about before you start sketching. First, consider your design approach. In the last course, you designed a responsive website for a large screen size first, a desktop computer. Then you scaled back your designs to fit on a mobile phone screen. Now in this course, you're going to get some practice doing the opposite. You'll start designing your responsive website for a small screen size first and move toward a larger screen size later. This means you'll use the progressive enhancement approach to design, since you're moving from a small screen size to a larger screen size for your website designs. Second, revisit the use case for your responsive website. Remember, a use case is a description of how users would experience your product design when trying to complete a task. You'll need to consider the use case for the responsive website you're designing, compared to the dedicated mobile app you just completed. What do you need for this design that you didn't have in the dedicated mobile app? This will inform your sketches. Third, as you think about potential solutions to the user problem, keep your users top of mind. Take a second to think about the user's step-by-step journey as they try to meet their needs by using your website. Remember, there isn't one solution for your users' problems. Your solutions will likely change and evolve over time. Finally, remember the layout and sitemap you're trying to achieve for your responsive website designs. This will help you focus your creativity on designing within those parameters. I'll provide a quick reminder of some common website layouts in the next video. At this point in the course, you'll use the Crazy 8s exercise to quickly come up with ideas for your responsive website. You'll need to revisit the problem statement you created earlier in the course, because you'll come up with ideas for solutions to the user need you outlined. To set up the exercise, fold a piece of paper in half 3 times until you have 8 boxes, set a timer to 60 seconds for each sketch, and get started. Your sketches might range from a really big donate button in the middle of the page to a carousel of images that bring stories of community members to life. Some of the ideas from this exercise might end up being parts of different pages on your website. So get creative about how you can solve the problem your users are facing. A pro tip for Crazy 8s is that it doesn't have to be completed in one sitting. If you find yourself having trouble coming up with ideas, take a break.
Maybe grab a glass of water or give yourself a few minutes away from the page. For some people, powering through can ignite creativity, but for others, it doesn't, and that's okay. Before you start ideating, let's quickly review some common web page layouts. Meet you in the next video. Hi, at this stage of the project, you're ready to start sketching ideas for your responsive website. You've already created a sitemap to outline the pages you'll need to create. So now, it's time to decide how you want to organize content within each page of your website. A good place to start is by deciding on a layout for the homepage of your website. The homepage is the access point for your website and the first part of your product that users will experience. The rest of the pages on your website can follow a similar layout to the one you choose to use on your homepage. In the last course, when you created sketches and wireframes for a responsive website, you designed a large screen size first. This meant you had a lot of layout options to choose from since there was a lot of space on the screen. But now for this project, you're designing for a small screen size first, like a mobile phone. Keep in mind that due to the limited space, many responsive websites on mobile phone screen sizes are simple single-column layouts. So with that in mind, let's start by discussing column layouts. In a column layout, there's a navigation menu at the top of the website and one or more columns of content that run down the site. On blog sites like Medium, the focus is on content, so a single column layout works well. You'll notice that they use a single column layout for both the desktop and mobile versions of this page. One thing to keep in mind, when website designs use a two-column or multi-column layout, there's usually a focal point. A focal point is a specific and distinct area of the website that captures the user's attention. For example, on the Grow with Google website, images are used to draw the user's focus to the categories of the website. Notice that this website uses a two-column layout for their homepage when it's viewed on a desktop computer, but a single-column layout for their homepage when it's viewed on mobile. This is responsive design in action. When you're deciding on a layout to use for your responsive website designs, consider the information that will be shown above the fold. Remember, above the fold refers to the content on a web page that doesn't require scrolling to experience. In other words, this is the content users will see when they first land on your page. You want to display the most important information for your user flow above the fold. For example, let's check out the Feeding America website on a desktop and mobile screen size. Both versions of this responsive website clearly draw users to the Donate button, which is the user flow Feeding America is most focused on. In the last course, we introduced a lot of ways that a web page can be laid out. In addition to single-column and multi-column layouts, you also learned about a box layout, which consists of boxes or squares of various sizes and proportions. A featured image layout, which places the user's focus on a single image or video that often takes up the entirety of the page. Asymmetrical layouts, which have purposeful imbalance between different sides of a page, including F-shaped layouts and Z-shaped layouts. A grid of cards layout, which features a series of cards that provide previews of more detailed content. And a tiered layer cake layout, which has individual rows or layers stacked on top of one another. Within each row, there can be different numbers of columns, and they don't have to be consistent. This is the layout that your instructor, Dave, demonstrated on the library website. If you'd like to learn more about layouts or explore examples of each website layout, feel free to revisit the videos from earlier in the certificate program, which will be linked in the course reading. Otherwise, good luck coming up with ideas for different ways to lay out your website. Get your creative juices flowing with Crazy Eights. Hi again. Earlier, you created sketches to come up with ideas for the design of your project. Now, it's time to use those sketches to create wireframes for your responsive website. You'll start by creating wireframes for the mobile phone screen size of your responsive website. You might remember that a wireframe is an outline or sketch of a product or a screen. There are two ways to create wireframes: paper and digital. Designers usually start with paper wireframes to plan the initial direction of the design. Later, These paper wireframes are turned into digital wireframes to refine and build out the entire user flow. Platforms like Figma and Adobe XD are great for this. For this project, you'll have the choice to create paper wireframes and then build your digital wires, like you've done for earlier projects in the certificate program. Or you can jump right into digital wireframes. Keep in mind, it's faster and cheaper to draw paper wireframes. So if you're still coming up with ideas for what your website pages should look like, it's probably easier to start by creating wireframes on paper. However, if you already have a clear vision for all of the pages of your website, then you can get right to digital wireframing. Another option is to do a combination of the two. For pages where you need to ideate, you might want to create paper wireframes. But for pages where you already have a layout in mind, you can skip ahead to digital wireframes. Early in your UX design career, you're more likely to need to start with paper wireframes. As you get more experience as a UX designer, you'll have more ideas about how to lay out a page and can build from previous designs you've created. So you'll be able to more easily jump straight into digital wireframes without paper wires first. Okay, you're ready to create paper and digital wireframes for the mobile version of your responsive website. Best of luck. Hello again. Now that you have wireframes for the mobile version of your responsive website, it's time to adapt them to a larger screen size. So how do you, as a UX designer, apply responsive design to a website? It takes a bit of planning, and it begins with the wireframes that you've already created. For example, take a wireframe that you created earlier for a mobile phone screen size and plot it on dot paper. Using dot or grid paper makes it easy for you to shrink or scale elements of the wireframe in a consistent way. Since desktop screens are significantly larger and wider than mobile phone screens, you'll now have to create a wider version of the wireframes you drew earlier. You will scale up your wireframe to 2 to 3 times the size to fit a larger screen. Since you're moving from a smaller screen with less digital page space to larger screens with more space, you can add more elements and components to your new wireframes. You may also need to increase the size of text and images across your website to ensure it still looks good on a bigger screen. First, start with a grid paper and a pen or pencil. Then draw a frame for each of the different size screens you want to scale your designs to. Next, rearrange your wireframes for each of the different screens. Use the dot or grid paper to resize your existing wireframes to these new screen sizes. All right, here's an example that I came up with. On the left is my mobile phone wireframe, and on the right is my desktop-sized wireframe. First, you notice that I converted elements and components that are meant to save space into larger designs. I expanded the hamburger menu into a navigation bar at the top of the screen, so each item is easy to click on. Next, I placed the text at the top of the mobile app below the navigation bar, but it wasn't enough to fill the screen, so I added a hero image to the right. Finally, I flipped the vertical column of images into a horizontal row of images to make better use of the desktop screen width. When you change your design elements to fit a new screen size, you can resize the text, icons, images, and navigation bars to fit better on your responsive grid. For example, a mobile screen size may not fit a hero image, but its desktop screen size will have more space. But you'll also want to focus on the spacing between elements. Make sure that the distance between icons or text is proportionate. All right, so that's how you resize your wireframes on paper. Keep in mind, if you're working on digital wireframes only, you can do the same resizing exercise in Figma and Adobe XD using a grid layout instead of grid paper. Now you're ready to adapt your own website wireframes for different screen sizes. Good luck. Hello again. Great job creating wireframes for various pages of your website that will adapt to different screen sizes. You've been working so hard during each stage of the design process in this course, and it's time to move even closer to your final designs. You'll turn your responsive website wireframes into a low-fidelity prototype. To create a low-fi prototype,
You'll follow the same process that you did earlier in the course when you turned your dedicated mobile app wireframes into a low-fidelity prototype. Remember, the reason we create prototypes is to test the functionality of your designs and identify problems related to the function of your app. Focus on the main user flow and connect all of the screens in your app to move through that flow. Remember to think about connecting elements that will help users move both forward and backwards through the flow, including arrows, X icons, and logos that connect back to the homepage. I know you're well prepared to create a low-fidelity prototype using your wireframes. You've done this before, so it's time to show what you know. Hi there. You just built a low-fidelity prototype for your responsive website. Great job. This video is just a quick check-in to remind you where you're at in the design process. It's time to gather feedback on your responsive website with a usability study. A usability study is a research method that helps us understand how easy it is for participants to do core tasks in a product. You can conduct as many usability studies as you need to gather feedback, make changes to your designs, and improve the user experience. Keep in mind, you can conduct a usability study focused on one screen size of your responsive website, like the website on a mobile phone. Or you can test multiple screen sizes of your website. It all depends on the type of feedback you want to receive. As you move into this part of the course, keep in mind the 4 things you'll need to do. First, plan the study. Second, conduct the study. Third, analyze and synthesize the observations you collect during the study. Remember, the goal here is to turn your observations into insights. And finally, iterate on your designs based on the insights that your research uncovered. If you need more information about how to conduct a usability study and iterate on your designs, check out the readings to revisit earlier material. Otherwise, start planning. At this stage, you're moving into high-fidelity design and can start to create your mockups. These static designs are meant to feel like the final product. Mockups should include visual design elements like typography, color, and iconography. Mockups should also adhere to visual design principles like emphasis, hierarchy, scale and proportion, and unity and variety. At this point, you've already created and stored some reusable visual and UI elements and components in a sticker sheet or assets panel. Remember to use them as you build the mockups for your responsive website. In addition to creating the mocks for the mobile version of your responsive website, you'll also want to create mocks for larger screen sizes. As with your wireframes, you'll want to consider how to change your design elements and components to fit a new screen size. You can resize the text, icons, images, buttons, and navigation bars to fit better on your responsive grid. Here's an example of the mobile version of a website being resized to better fit a desktop version. You'll notice that the mobile version has a carousel that a user can swipe through. On the desktop version, the carousel content has been broken out into cards arranged on a grid. This layout makes better use of the additional screen space. That's it. We've reviewed some tips for creating mockups for your responsive website. Now it's your turn to work on your designs. Well done on creating mockups of your responsive website. I'm sure it feels great to be so close to the end of this portfolio project. You're almost there. There's only one thing left to do for your responsive website. Convert your mockups into a high-fidelity prototype. I bet you remember the process to create a high-fidelity prototype from earlier in the course, when you created a high-fidelity prototype for your dedicated mobile app. In case you don't, here's a super quick refresher. First, lay out the mockups in the order of the main user flow. Second, connect the screens or elements within the screens. Third, add interaction details. For your responsive website, you'll probably stick to a mouse click, but feel free to explore in Figma or Adobe XD. Fourth, adjust the animation. Remember, the animation settings determine how the prototype moves from one screen to another. And fifth, complete this process for all of the screens in your responsive website. So why would you create a high-fidelity prototype again?
Well, hi-fi prototypes give you the opportunity to test your app designs with users. Testing helps you decide how to iterate on your designs based on the feedback that users provide. And testing proves whether the solution you've been designing addresses the community problem you're trying to solve. Also, in the real world, a high-fidelity prototype is what you'll likely share with your manager, colleagues, and cross-functional teammates at the end of a design project. It's always good to practice the tasks that you'll need to do in your future job. For this project, if you've been designing for a real organization or community, the high-fidelity prototype is what you'd share with them too. All right, that's it for my fast reminder on high-fidelity prototypes. Go ahead and turn your mockups into a high-fidelity prototype now. You've got this. You've made it to the final step of your third portfolio project. Can you believe how much progress you've made during this course? Wow! With the high-fidelity prototypes of your responsive website ready to go, you can test your designs and make improvements. By now, you know the 4 steps to conduct UX research. Plan the study, conduct the study, analyze and synthesize the observations you collect during the study, and iterate on your designs based on the insights that your research uncovered. Before you get to work, let me share one pro tip. At this point in the design process, it can be helpful to test a specific screen size, since the user flow might be a little different for each screen size. You should conduct a usability study focused on the screen size that your users are most likely to experience your product on, whether that's a mobile phone, a tablet, a laptop, or a desktop computer. This is also a great time to gather feedback from the community you've been designing for, to check that your solution addresses their needs. And with that, the time has come to conduct the very last usability study of this certificate program and iterate on your designs one more time. You can do it. A huge congratulations! You've finished designing a dedicated mobile app and a responsive website for social good. What a big milestone. If you've been completing the courses of the certificate program in order, you already know about the value of portfolios for UX designers. Portfolios are the primary way for designers to present their work to recruiters, hiring managers, and everyone else. You've already added your first 2 projects to your portfolio. Now it's time to add your third and final project about designing for social good. Remember, a major component of your portfolio is the case studies that showcase your work. A case study is a detailed summary of a design project that typically includes the project goal and objectives, your role in the project, research methods and insights, design process and artifacts, challenges and constraints, the outcome of the project, and lessons learned. Case studies demonstrate your design knowledge, your willingness to collaborate with a team, and your ability to see an idea through from start to finish despite challenges. When a recruiter or hiring manager is considering you for a job, they'll want to find case studies within your portfolio. Each design project you complete will have its own case study. Case studies should be presented in a concise and engaging way. Your case study needs to tell recruiters exactly what they need to know as quickly and efficiently as possible while being visually appealing and easy to skim. There are some critical pieces that your case study should include, such as the goal of the project, the objectives to meet that goal, and the role that you played throughout. It's helpful to include the key challenges or constraints that you faced. Your case study should also identify who the target user is, describe the research methods you conducted, and include the relevant insights from that research. You should show the relevant artifacts that you produced throughout the project, your sketches, your wireframes, prototypes, and final polished designs. It's important to show not only the final result, but to also provide a glimpse into how well you used the design process to solve real users' problems. If the project launched or otherwise had a real introduction to the market, sharing real outcomes is a huge plus. And most importantly, be sure to reflect on what you learned throughout by using the design process. If you want to check out examples of entry-level designers' portfolios to get inspiration for your own, visit the course readings. When you're ready, you can begin building your case study for the dedicated mobile app and responsive website designs you just finished.
Congratulations! You've made it to the end of the design process. You've created a dedicated mobile app and a responsive website for social good. That's quite an accomplishment, and you should be very proud of yourself. In this part of the course, you designed an entire responsive website. To start, you learned how to design for different experiences. You reviewed the importance of information architecture and created a sitemap for your website. You sketched ideas and potential layouts for your website. You built wireframes, on paper, digitally, or both, for different size screens. You developed a low-fidelity prototype and tested it through a usability study to improve your designs. Then you moved into high-fidelity designs. You created mockups for different size screens of your responsive website. Finally, you created a high-fidelity prototype of your responsive website and tested it one more time. This was your final chance to iterate on your designs and improve the user experience in your product. You're almost done with this entire certificate program. All that's left to do is prepare your portfolio and get ready for job interviews. I'll meet you there. Welcome back. You've almost made it to the finish line. At this point in the program, you've completed 3 projects and have included them in your online portfolio. So the time has finally come. You're ready to apply all of your UX design knowledge in the real world. In this part of the course, you'll make final adjustments to your portfolio to ensure it's ready to share in job applications. Next, you'll explore the UX design interview process. You'll learn how to conduct pre-interview research about the job and company you're applying to. Then you'll get to know different types of interviewers and develop strategies to build rapport with those interviewers. After that, you'll learn how to structure your responses to interview questions using the STAR method. You'll also explore some common types of UX design interview questions, including an elevator pitch, a portfolio presentation, a whiteboard exercise, and a take-home design exercise. Finally, you'll enter the world of freelancing. You'll create a business plan and learn how to find and land your first customer. There's a ton of exciting information to come, and I'll be here to support you as you prepare to find a job as a UX designer. All of your hard work is about to pay off. So what are you waiting for? Let's get started. First off, congratulations. You've created 3 UX design projects that are ready to share with the world. That's a huge accomplishment, and I commend you on making it this far. Now that your projects are uploaded to your portfolio, it's time to start thinking about how to present your work to potential employers. It's important for your portfolio site to convey who you are and the type of jobs you're interested in. The way you position your portfolio and the design choices you make on your site will help communicate your identity as a designer and how you'd like to be evaluated as a potential hire. There are lots of different types of jobs out there, including positions at large companies, design agencies, startups, and contract agencies. You can also become a freelance UX designer and work directly with clients. As a new designer, you probably don't have just one type of job in mind yet. It's good to keep your options open as you're starting out and gain experience in different job types. Once you have a better sense of the types of positions or organizations you'd like to work for, you can start honing your portfolio to communicate more strategically with those target audiences. There are infinite ways to tell your story through your portfolio, but here are some pro tips to keep in mind. First, for each project in your portfolio, clearly state the user you designed for and their problem that you tried to solve. Second, show each step of the design process in enough detail to demonstrate your grasp of the fundamentals. Many entry-level UX design portfolio case studies are clearly structured to follow the phases of the design process: empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test. Next, highlight your final designs or prototypes from each project. You should also include positive user feedback about your final designs or success metrics you might be able to capture. Finally, demonstrate a willingness to learn. This can come across in your reflections on your own work. For example,
Instead of only highlighting everything you did well, it can be useful to identify mistakes you made during the process and things you do differently next time. The goal of your portfolio as an entry-level designer is to show potential. You want to prove that you have enough skills to do the nitty-gritty, sometimes tedious design work, and that you're open to continuing to learn. Just like the design projects you completed throughout the certificate program, you're constantly iterating on your portfolio. As you make changes to your portfolio now, remember that this is an ongoing process, and your portfolio will continue to improve with time. Hi there. Now that you've started to prepare your portfolio for job applications, let's discuss the job interview process. Typically, there are multiple steps in the interview process for UX design jobs. That might include a first interview that's often done over the phone, and a second round of interviews with a panel interview, a whiteboard exercise, and a design exercise. Let's explore each of these in more detail. Once you've applied to a job, the first interview you might have is a phone screen. The first interview is an introductory call with a recruiter or hiring manager to determine whether you meet the minimum set of requirements for the role. They might also be used to determine what your strongest skills and interests are to make sure you're being considered for the right jobs at the company. The first interview often takes place over the phone or a video call. Your interviewer will probably reserve a portion of this first call for you to ask questions about the role, so you should have a couple of thoughtful questions about the job or the company prepared. Before your first interview, do some research on the company. Read the job description thoroughly and familiarize yourself with the product or service you might be working on. If there are products you're unfamiliar with, take some time to learn more about them before your interview. There's a better chance that a recruiter or hiring manager will be interested in you if you show a real interest in the job. If all goes well, you might be asked to schedule a second phone call or a video interview to discuss your relevant knowledge and skills in more depth. The second round of interviews usually explores your experience in more depth so that the team you're applying to can understand how your background fits the role. They're a great opportunity for you to showcase your passions and highlight your strongest skills. Second round interviews are more likely to be in person. These interviews can take anywhere from an hour to a full day. If your interviews are in person, they will likely all happen on the same day. However, if your second round of interviews is remote, they are more likely to be spread out over multiple days. The second round of interviews might include a panel interview or a whiteboard interview. A panel interview is when a group of people meet with you at the same time to assess your skills. The interviewers might ask you for examples of situations that demonstrate your work ethic and how you might approach problem solving. They might also ask you to present your portfolio to the panel and answer questions they have about it. If you are asked to submit a design exercise before the panel interview, you might present that exercise to the panel. Otherwise, you might be asked to participate in a whiteboard interview. A whiteboard interview includes a practical demonstration of your skills in real time for your interviewers. You'll learn more about design exercises and whiteboard interviews later in this course. After your second round of interviews, you'll hopefully receive a job offer. But keep in mind that the number and types of interviews involved in the hiring process can vary depending on the needs of the company, its size, its industry, and the company culture. Each company handles hiring a little differently. For example, at small companies or startups, it's common for every interviewee to speak with someone on the leadership team before an offer is extended. To learn more about what to expect during your interview, you can reach out to your recruiter or your contact at the company for more information. Now that you have a better idea of what to expect during your interviews, let's discuss how to prepare. One of the most important things that you can do to prepare for an interview is to learn about the organization you're interviewing with and the products you might work on. You want to know what you're getting yourself into before the interview takes place. So in this video, we'll discuss how to conduct pre-interview research. The first step in your pre-interview research is to explore the requirements and expectations of the job you're applying for. Start by reading the job description in detail. Or you can reach out to someone who has the job or has worked in a similar role. If you don't know someone personally, consider reaching out on a professional networking site like LinkedIn. Speaking with someone who has the job you're applying for can help you get a sense of the background, knowledge, and skills that you'll need to succeed in that job. Just remember to use your discretion on who you contact, and be sure to keep your messages concise and professional. The second step in the pre-interview research process is to build a knowledge base about the company you're applying to and its products. Throughout the interview process, you can expect to be asked what you know about the company and its products, so you want to be well prepared. Consider researching questions like, what's the company mission statement? What products do they have in the market? How are those products designed? What's the company culture like? You can find answers to these questions in a lot of different ways, such as exploring the company's website to learn about their values, or checking out the company's social media accounts to understand what they post about. You'll want to spend extra time researching products that you could work on if you were to get the job. In addition, asking a few questions about the company's products during your interview can demonstrate that you're truly interested in the company's work. All right, the third step in your pre-interview research is to determine common interview questions that may be asked. Use a search engine to ask, what are common interview questions for a UX designer position? Compare information from different sources until you get a general idea of the most common questions asked in entry-level UX design interviews. You can also use other sources, like reviews of the job interview process on sites like Glassdoor or Indeed, in order to gather additional information about questions that might be asked. As part of this program, we'll also provide a list of common UX design interview questions in the course reading. Now that you know what questions you may be asked, the fourth step in your pre-interview research is to prepare answers to each interview question. You may even want to ask a friend or family member to help you practice for your interview by asking you questions from the list. Preparing answers to interview questions requires understanding how to describe the case studies in your portfolio and knowing the narrative you want to share about yourself. First, to describe the case studies in your portfolio, you should reflect on the user you designed for and their goals and pain points. You should also be ready to explain how you use the design process to help solve the user problem. When asked, explain your design process and the deliverables you created. Describe how your designs were tested and refined at each stage. Conveying your thought process is important during an interview, so practice like you're giving a presentation about each of your case studies. It doesn't have to be too technical, and you can show your creativity too. In addition, you need to know the narrative you want to share about yourself. Build a story about who you are as a designer, your personal brand, and reasons why projects were important to you. To prepare, ask yourself questions like, is there a project in my portfolio that marks a turning point in my learning or career? What challenges did I encounter during the design process, and how did I overcome them? What did I learn from each project? You want the interviewers to understand who you are as a designer and as a potential employee. By creating an easy-to-follow narrative about who you are, you can give the interviewers insight into your value as a candidate. Keep in mind that interviewing is a skill, and like all skills, practice makes perfect. Do your research, invest in preparation, and don't be shy about rehearsing your answers to interview questions. Take every opportunity to learn, grow, and improve. Pre-interview research is just the beginning. In the next video, we'll discuss getting to know your interviewers. Let's keep going. One of the most important things that you can do to prepare for an interview is to get to know your interviewers. Is the person you're meeting with a recruiter, a hiring manager, or an evaluator? Depending on the company's hiring process, you might eventually interview with all of these types of interviewers. So let's explore the roles of a recruiter, a hiring manager, and an evaluator in detail. Typically, Recruiters are liaisons between you, as a potential employee, and the hiring manager. For the most part, recruiters work for a company or agency to find candidates that fit the requirements that the hiring manager has outlined. Recruiters usually begin the hiring process by conducting the first interview, which is often a phone screen to determine whether you meet the minimum set of requirements for the role. Speaking with a recruiter during your first interview is an excellent opportunity to figure out if you and the role are a good match for each other. During this first interview, the recruiter might ask questions like, what do you know about the company or product? Why are you interested in the position? What are your strengths? Can you take me through one of your design projects? During the first interview with a recruiter, don't be afraid to ask questions of your own. In fact, recruiters expect you to. You shouldn't feel like asking questions make you seem unprofessional or inexperienced. It's quite the opposite, actually. Asking questions shows that you're interested in the position. It also helps you figure out if the job is something you could enjoy and see yourself doing well in. Some questions you might ask recruiters include, does this position have room for growth? How is the work-life balance of this company? What can you tell me about the team? In addition to interviewing you, recruiters should provide support and any helpful information you need before meeting with the hiring manager. A hiring manager is the person the role will report to or work alongside on a daily basis. If you're interviewing with a hiring manager, they might have more detailed questions about your portfolio, knowledge, and skills. In many cases, they want to know how you've handled difficult situations in the past and if you're prepared to manage them in the future. Self-aware employees who want to learn and grow are much more in demand than those who can't recognize their mistakes. Hiring managers want to learn more about you as a person too. You'll want to focus on your related UX work most of the time, of course. But don't be afraid to mix in a personal story as well that expresses your personality and your interests, as long as it's appropriate. Depending on the company you're interviewing with, you might meet with a hiring manager at any point during the interview process. Finally, an evaluator is a subject matter expert who isn't a professional recruiter or hiring manager, but is there to evaluate candidates to make a recommendation on whether to proceed with the interview process. Evaluators might approach the interview similarly to hiring managers, but focus more on your range of skills. A lot of times, evaluators are keeping an eye out for candidates who might be a good fit for the company as a whole instead of for just one particular role. You're likely to interview with an evaluator during the second round of interviews, like during a panel or whiteboard interview. So far, we've discussed the types of roles your interviewers might have. Another way to get to know your interviewers is to do a bit of research on them. There are two main places to search for information about your interviewers: the company website and their interviewer's LinkedIn profile. Smaller companies often have an About page on their company website where they list team members. The company site can help you learn more about each interviewer's role at the company. Another place to search for information on your interviewers is LinkedIn. Today, most professionals maintain a LinkedIn profile. These profiles usually include an individual's job history and related experiences. Your interviewer also might include their portfolio of work on LinkedIn, which is a super valuable resource. Reviewing their portfolio shows that you're interested in them and have done your research, which helps you make a strong impression that you're committed to becoming a member of their team. And that's it. You now know about the types of people who might interview you for an entry-level UX design role: a recruiter, a hiring manager, and an evaluator. And you know about a couple of ways to do research on your interviewers. Up next, we'll explore how to build a rapport with your interviewers. Hello again. Now that you know a little more about who your interviewers might be, take a few minutes to consider how to build rapport with them. Every step in the interview process is an opportunity to build rapport, meaning a friendly, empathetic relationship that makes communication and connection easy. Let's explore some tips for building rapport with your interviewer. First, be yourself. Every person you meet during an interview might be a future colleague that you'll have a long-term professional relationship with. In the same way you want to know more about who they want to know more about you. That means actively sharing about yourself to build a relationship, while also being professional and respectful of their personal boundaries. Second, be genuine. This means being your authentic, professional self and representing your work and your values honestly. Communicate professionally in the way that you feel most comfortable and natural. This is important because you want to feel comfortable being your professional self in any work environment where you're eventually hired. Third, be confident. You might be nervous as you start the interview, but keep in mind that you've done the work to get from submitting your application to being in the interview, sharing your knowledge, skills, and qualifications. The interviewer was interested in you enough to advance you to this point in the process, so you've already proven you're a great candidate. It's important that you feel comfortable enough to answer questions honestly, based on your experience or knowledge. An interview is not about trying to pass a test with a single right answer. Fourth, be curious. Keeping an open mind creates more opportunities for you to learn more about the person you're communicating with, the job you're interviewing for, and the company you're considering joining. Being genuinely curious leads to having better, more insightful questions. You might think you already know a ton about the company because you did your pre-interview research, but ask questions and learn more about the people you'd be working with and how they feel about the organization. And finally, be appropriate. Always keep in mind that you're seeking a professional role in a business context. Do your homework so you know how to represent yourself appropriately. At some companies, wearing a suit to the interview might not be appropriate. At other companies, wearing a suit might be a requirement. When in doubt, ask the recruiter. But it's usually best to be overdressed than underdressed. In addition, use appropriate professional language at every touch point in your job search, even if they don't. You want to build a rapport, but being too casual in your conversations could cause interviewers to misunderstand your ability to work in a professional environment. This could be the one thing that prevents them from recommending you for the position. Great. Now that you know more about the people you're meeting with and how to build a rapport with them, let's explore a method for answering interview questions.
Hi, I'm Cinthya, and I'm a UX manager at Google. As a manager, specifically as a hiring manager, what I look for when I look for resumes and portfolios, it's really like understanding what kind of professional are you? What kind of process do you take? What is your approach? So the best thing for me to understand like that about any particular candidate is looking at case studies, right? Like if you walk me through your case study, whether it's real or not, it does not have to be a real product or a real project. It could be something that you started on your own because you were just like, oh, this needs to be fixed, right? Something that maybe is bugging you or something, but you turn it into a case study. And the case study for me tells me a lot about how do you approach a problem? How do you identify an opportunity? What kind of things would you do in order for you to drive that idea forward? I really focus on understanding not only your approach, within that approach, how do you talk to your coworkers? Are you a good teammate? Do you like to collect feedback about how do you work, the project, and so forth? How can things be better? How do you present? How do you communicate? How do you deal with difficult situations? And those are important skills that I look forward because we work in teams. And as a team member, I want to make sure that we can work well together. For me, I look for people that can add value and add different perspective to my team and the larger team. I don't want to hire another person that is just like the rest of us, right? I definitely advise you to not only prepare for answering questions, but have your questions ready so you can ask those questions, do your homework of what are the things that you will care about knowing while you're talking to whatever company you're talking. Do your homework about the company and maybe even the team members if you have the roster of the people you want to talk to. So you can target the questions based on who they are. It shows that you care. It shows that you actually did your research and you're not just there last minute, getting ready and presenting your portfolio, but it's an investment. Ask as many questions as they will ask you because it's a two-way conversation. I've been interviewing a lot of different candidates throughout my career. And one of the things that I remember, for example, of sometimes you meet candidates and maybe they don't have the right skill set on paper, right? But when you meet the candidate, and this has happened to me actually multiple times, I've met various people that were, after seeing the portfolio, I'm like, oh, this is a good portfolio, but maybe the resume, like, I don't know the skills, the experience, do they have the right experience? What made me believe in them is the grit and the ability for them to seek feedback and their hunger for growth. That, for me, is a huge, huge, huge skill that, like, it's very hard to teach, right? So if you find people, when I find people that are like, I may not know this, but I'm willing to learn and I want to learn, and they tell me how, and I'm open to feedback, and, you know, like, that ability for me is absolutely the best, because every time I have bet on people that had that skill and that approach, it turned out to be fantastic. One of the things that I always tell people that are going to go through an interview is to really think about who you are as a professional. What are the things that you're looking for? What is that one thing, or like the role, the opportunity you're looking for, that is going to make you super happy to wake up in the morning and go to your job?
The interview process can seem intimidating and overwhelming, but it doesn't have to be. In this video, we'll cover some strategies for answering questions in a UX design interview. I've been in the UX design industry for over 25 years, so I've conducted my fair share of interviews. To kick things off, let me share some of the questions I like to ask when interviewing UX designers. The first question I like to ask is, can you tell me about a time when you did your own research to understand user needs? Another question I ask is, what kind of research did you do and why? What were the most surprising insights? And finally, I'll often ask interviewees, what part of the design process do you enjoy doing the most? Why? Those questions might feel new to you, or they might seem familiar, but I'll outline a great way to answer them in an interview setting. The best answer is a clear answer that actually addresses the question being asked. Don't be afraid to take the time to gather your thoughts and know what direction you want to take before answering. Preparing a list of interview questions and answers ahead of time is a great way to study for an interview. A helpful strategy for answering interview questions is to use the STAR method. STAR stands for situation, task, action, result. For example, imagine I'm being interviewed, and the interviewer asks me, describe a project that makes you proud. Using the STAR method, I want to structure my answer in a way that's relevant and easy to follow. My first thought goes to a specific situation that relates to that question. So I'll start with, when I was working at Microsoft on the Xbox 360 as part of the design team. Next, I'll relate that situation to the task that I was assigned. I was asked to help figure out how a new concept called achievements could actually work. Achievements were system-level rewards for meeting in-game objectives. It was a new idea that nobody had done at that point, since this was 2004. Then, I'll share the action that I took to complete that task. I worked with fellow UX designers and product managers to design the achievement system and its user experience, and then with game designers from Microsoft Game Studios to shape and validate the idea. We iterated the design with prototypes and then tested them with users to get the behavior and interaction models right. Then I worked with the interface designers to dial in the look and feel, with the sound designers to get the sound right, and with the hardware engineers to make the lights flash on the controller. Finally, I'll share the result that was achieved at the end of that situation. Through a lot of hard work, we enabled an Xbox 360 platform experience where gamers could meet an in-game objective and be rewarded with an achievement. Once they had an achievement, the gamer could press a button on their controller to learn more about it and accumulate trophies and points in a collection attached to their gamer profile. This became a signature experience for the Xbox 360 and introduced an interaction model that all games and consoles have since adopted. While answering questions using the STAR method, be sure to give the interviewers a sense of who you are and why you're there. Be well prepared with specific points about how your unique background and experiences fit with the position. Now it's your turn. Think about the 3 questions I shared at the beginning of the video and try using the STAR method to come up with responses. The more you practice, the better you'll be at using this method.
My name is Jay, and I'm a visual designer at Google. My formative years, I think, were really focused on photography and filmmaking. I had aspirations to become a filmmaker and be on the next Star Wars movie. And of course, I instantly learned that I needed to know a lot more software if I really want to get into this field. So I started becoming a freelance designer and kind of picking up odd jobs and teaching myself the software along the way. So I kind of took a non-traditional approach to getting into the industry. When you're looking for your first UX design job, it's easy to focus in on a company that you admire. But I think especially early on, what you really want to look for is that culture. You want to make sure that you've got strong mentors, strong leadership, people with vision, people that understand what they expect of you and what you can expect of them. Because at the end of the day, your first few years are extremely formative. You're defining who you are as a designer and what you love to do. So interviewing for your first UX design role, it's really exciting. I think there's a lot of things that people focus in on. They focus on the work, they focus on the craft. They want to make sure that their portfolio is strong and clearly reflects who they are. But I think it's more about showcasing three specific things. First, it really is about how you got from concept to launch. It's not about what you launched, it's more about how you got there. So as a UX manager, the things I'm looking for when it comes to how you launched a product tends to be more about how you adapted your idea throughout that process. But what we love to see is a designer have an idea, test it, get in front of people, and then adapt and change and refine and define that problem greater. So it's that adaptability kind of throughout the design process that we're really looking for. The second thing is passion. We really want to know what you're passionate about. When you come into that interview, I think the more you can show what areas of the whole design process that you're passionate about, the better we can help you with your career, the better we can actually push you forward and fit you with the right team at the right time. I think the third thing that you really want to showcase is what have you learned along the way from project to project, and how has it influenced the next thing that came along? So take a step back. Really understand your own personal journey. What do you love about design? What do you love about the process of creating a product? What do you want to learn next? Where do you want to see your career go moving forward? All of these things, I think, will help a UX manager not only understand the impact that you can make in a new role, but they can also understand how to influence and help shape your career so you can actually grow as an individual and make the career jumps that you really want to make.
Have you ever been in a situation where someone's trying to get to know you and you don't know how to describe yourself? Or have you ever felt like you went on about yourself for way too long? We've all been there. That's why when you're interviewing or networking, it's important to be prepared with an elevator pitch that describes who you are and what you're looking for. An elevator pitch is a short, memorable description that explains a concept in an easy-to-understand way. The idea is that you only have the attention of your audience for the duration of an elevator ride, so you have to be able to communicate the concept quickly and succinctly. For our purposes, the elevator pitch will focus on who you are and what makes you a unique and valuable UX designer. So what's needed in a UX designer's elevator pitch? Let me share an example of my own elevator pitch. It includes a lot of info, so let's break it down into sections. There's the intro. It details who I am and a bit about my professional background. I'm Paolo, and I'm a user experience designer, manager, leader, and educator with 25 plus years of experience designing products and services across several industries and all consumer platforms. Next is the most applicable part of my background that I bring to this job opportunity. I've contributed to the consumer user experience of billions of people through my work on YouTube, Netflix, Mercedes-Benz, Zynga, and Xbox, as well as the business enterprise experience through my work at Microsoft, Oracle, and IBM. After that, I add in what makes me excited to be working in UX and showcase my passion for the work I've done. I love being able to make technology useful, usable, and beautiful for people globally. And last, I communicate why I'm interested in working for Google. Google's mission is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. That excites me both as a designer and as a longtime user of Google products. Always come to an interview with an answer for all of these questions and an elevator pitch that communicates your qualifications for that specific job. Once you create and start using your elevator pitch, you'll see its value in all types of situations, not just when interviewing with potential employers. I can't promise that an elevator pitch will get you out of an awkward social situation, but you will be more prepared when an interviewer asks you to tell them about yourself. Take a moment now to come up with your own elevator pitch using the template I just shared. Good luck.
My name is Kartik and I work as a UX designer. I grew up in a small town in India called Nasik. It's in the western part of India. So this was like mid 2000s when internet was really new for people in India. Even it was new for me. I was someone who would find like some new cool things on internet and then share it with my friends. So whenever they faced any like technical problems or any tech issues or whatever in computers or internet, they would come to me. So I used to do Yahoo search or something like that and find a solution. And I would tell them the solution. And they were like, hey, you're so cool. How you do that? And then I was like, yeah, that's my magic. I used to help them build their e-commerce website. I just started this thing to solve people's problem in tech. Later, I realized that I became something what today we call as UX designer or product designer. That was how it all started. And that's where I am right now, helping people and solving their problems. Preparing for interviews is tough. This is something I have gone through a lot because when I was preparing for interviews, even before joining Google, I was really new. I was a new grad. I did not have enough real world projects. There was an advice which I saw from Dropbox CEO. His name is Drew. He said, like, let's say if you want to work at Dropbox, you would see how Dropbox works, what they do. Is there something problematic in Dropbox, and how would you solve that? This creates an impression that you really care about that company, and also it shows that you know how to work on real world projects. I'm a big fan of like WhatsApp and how they work and how they design their products. So I found like, hey, how can I make this product better? So I made a case study on my portfolio like, hey, this is how WhatsApp works and these are some problems that WhatsApp has. And I showed like how I would, as a designer, would solve that. One more thing that helped me a lot when I was preparing for interviews is like practice talking about your work or maybe talking about yourself. So I realized that I should practice this with someone who doesn't know me or doesn't know about my work. So that's what I did. I connected up with a lot of people online. I used to just send them a note, hey, I'm a junior designer and I'm looking for so and I'm practicing for interviews. So would you mind just doing like a mock interview for me? And I thought people would not respond because they are really senior folks working in different companies that they would not have time. But on the contrary side, people are really helpful. And then they would have all these set of questions, which I would have never thought oh yeah, he's looking at my work from different angle. That's why I would say like if you do a lot of mock interviews with like some real designers in other world, then it will help you to have that confidence when you go for like real interviews.
As I mentioned earlier, during your second round of interviews, you may be asked to present your portfolio. This is your time to shine a spotlight on all of your design work. If you've been asked to deliver a presentation of your portfolio, there are many approaches you can take. Your interviewer might even have a set structure for you to follow. But to bring this concept to life, here's an example of what a portfolio presentation during an interview might include. First, introduce yourself and your background. You can keep this brief. Share your name and a short description of your educational or work background using a warm and friendly tone. Second, present your most important or relevant case study. Clearly state the user you designed for and describe the user's goals and pain points. You should also explain how you use the design process to help solve the user problem. UX designers should always put the user front and center, so you want to showcase this in your work. Then, explain your design process in order and draw attention to the deliverables you created. As part of this, you'll want to describe how your designs were tested at each stage and the improvements you made to your designs based on the insights from your testing. You should also be sure to share lessons learned. Recruiters and hiring managers are looking for someone who wants to learn and grow. A great way to show this is by calling out things you do differently the next time around. Third, if time allows, you can present an additional case study. Fourth, present any pre-assigned design exercises. We'll talk about design exercises in more detail in the next video. And fifth, invite questions from the panel about the information you presented. Keep in mind that the interviewer's job is to ask questions to learn more about your thought processes. So don't be surprised if they have a lot of questions for you. Now that you're ready to present your portfolio, remember to keep calm and confident. You've reached one of the final stages of the interview process, and you deserve to be in the room. You've done amazing work, and showing confidence in your design choices will make you appear more professional. When you're done with the interview, thank everyone for their time and for any insights they might have given you about your work or design process. Finally, it's also a good idea to follow up after your portfolio presentation with a thank you email that includes a recap of your qualifications and your interest in the position. You might not get a response, but it's a good habit to get into as you interview. If you don't have contact information for everyone in the interview, you can always send a message through whoever your company contact has been throughout the interview process. Portfolio presentations can be tough, but they're a great opportunity to celebrate your skills and accomplishments. The best practices we've covered will help you communicate who you are as a designer and the unique qualities that make you an asset to potential employers. Check out the course readings for more information about how to ace this type of interview. Job interviews for UX designers often include a practical demonstration. Whiteboard interviews are a popular way of conducting these demonstrations. Whiteboard interviews get their name from the erasable writing surfaces that are used for teaching and planning that you see in so many classrooms and offices. During a whiteboard interview, you'll be given a design problem to solve in real time using a whiteboard, so that interviewers can observe and learn about how you work. This kind of exercise is a chance for interviewers to watch you work in action, which can help them assess your knowledge, thought process, design capabilities, and communication skills. Usually, as you come up with design solutions on the whiteboard, interviewers will ask questions about your process. Interviewers might even join you on the whiteboard as they would with a colleague. The goal of this exercise is to simulate a real-world work experience. The interviewers want to put you in a situation that tests how you engage with colleagues, manage the stress involved with questions and debate, and respond to the pressure of designing based on constraints they'll provide. A whiteboard interview might be one-on-one with an interviewer or with a panel of interviewers from different parts of the team that you'd be joining. So, you might be wondering, how can I prepare for a whiteboard interview? Well, first, do your research before the interview. Any problem given to you during a whiteboard interview has to be limited enough for you to make meaningful progress in a short amount of time. But it also needs to be open and ambiguous enough to allow for your unique perspective to come through. Make the most of sites like Indeed or Glassdoor to research examples of whiteboard interviews and get a sense for what they're like. There are tons of examples of whiteboard interview questions online. Remember the prompt generator from Sharpen that you used to select your portfolio projects? All of those prompts are similar to whiteboard interview cases you might be asked to design. Second, practice thinking aloud.
During a whiteboard interview, you'll need to describe each decision you make and explain your reasoning. Remember, interviewers want to understand your thinking process, so you need to share what's on your mind. Your ultimate goal is to be able to accurately describe your thoughts without getting lost in the details. Thinking aloud can feel a little awkward at first, so it takes a lot of practice. A great way to check how well you can think aloud is to practice answering a whiteboard interview question and record yourself. Then review the video to check whether your logic and explanations are clear. The third tip I'll share to help you ace your whiteboard interview is to clarify your task. Pay careful attention to what's being asked of you. After an interviewer gives you your task, repeat it back to them to be sure you understand the instructions, the goal, and the constraints. This is also where you can ask for clarification before you get started to make sure you fully understand the challenge. These types of interviews often create ambiguous conditions on purpose to test how candidates react. After you receive the design task, start whiteboarding your design process where you feel most comfortable. For example, if you identify a shortcut in the research information provided at the start of the interview, don't worry about following every step of the design process we've shown in this course. While you often want to go in the order of the design process, empathize, define, ideate, prototype, test, you don't always have to follow this process from beginning to end. Remember, at any point during the whiteboard interview, you can ask questions. If you want to know about use cases, edge cases, or even the general demographics of your target users, it's best to ask questions and adjust your design from there. Here's an insider tip from my perspective as an interviewer. One of the most important questions to ask is to clarify who the user is. That's a great place to start your whiteboard exercise. And last but not least, always be confident. During a whiteboard exercise, you're in your element. Everything you've learned throughout this program will give you the tools you need to solve these problems. You get to take the design process you've spent so much time practicing and put it into action. Keep in mind, you wouldn't have gotten this far into the interview process if the employer wasn't interested in you, your skills, and your creativity. So use this time to wow them. So you now know a few tips and tricks to help you ace a whiteboard interview. You've got this. There's one last thing that I think might help you prepare. Let's discuss the criteria upon which your whiteboard exercise will be evaluated. While each interviewer is totally unique, here's a list of common questions that your interviewers might be asking themselves during your whiteboard interview. What questions did they ask before starting? Do they know the user they're designing for? Does this product design fit the guidelines given? Do they think too independently, or do they rely too much on the team's help? Are they truly brainstorming, or are they focusing only on one design? Are they addressing the core problem of the exercise? How well do they communicate as they design? Is this someone who can work well on a team? I know that these whiteboard interviews can feel intimidating, but I can assure you that there's nothing to worry about. Explaining your design process is something that you'll do throughout your work and career as a UX designer. In the real world, it's important for team members to know the thinking behind each other's designs, so they can more easily collaborate and decide on design solutions. So, it's important to feel comfortable describing your thought process while designing, both for interviews and beyond. Now that you're starting to get the hang of the whiteboard interview process, let's talk about take-home design exercises. During a take-home design exercise, you'll follow a similar process as a whiteboard interview, but you'll do the work on your own and from the comfort of your own home. You might have anywhere from 12 hours to multiple days to come up with ideas for design based on a specific prompt. Just like with a whiteboard exercise, you want to pay careful attention to what's being asked of you and clarify the task if needed. Read the instructions thoroughly and carefully. After the take-home design exercise ends, you should be ready to present your design solution. In many cases, you will be asked to present your take-home design exercise as part of your second round of interviews or in front of a panel of interviewers.
And that's it. Using what you've learned thus far, you should be ready to handle almost any type of interview you come across. Before moving on to the final part of this course, take some time to prepare for interviews. The more time and effort that you put into preparing, the better the interview will go.
Hi, my name is Juan. I'm a visual designer at Google. How I prepare for an interview? This is the most important thing that as a designer you need to learn. It doesn't matter how good you are in design. You need to learn how to speak in front of others. You need to learn how to sell your ideas. And sometimes we make a lot of mistakes. Even me now, I still learning about speak in public, how to sell idea, and how to prepare myself to talk. One of the things that I do all the time is read, double check and double check. Sometimes we make mistakes even in typography. I know we are designer, but we need to take care in small details. Because when you present, sometimes people just focus in the negative thing, in your mistakes. So, and we as a professional, we need to make sure that we don't make mistakes. Another tips that I mentioned to my friends is always ask questions, be curious. It's not about that the company want to know you if you deserve the job. It's about they want to know if you really want to work with them. And sometimes when people come to a Google interview, they feel very intimidated. In my case, struggling with the language, I never have a degree in design. When I went to the interview, I asked questions. And of course, part of my research was to learn about the people that are going to interview me. I want to learn what kind of thing they do for the company. And based on that, I focus my conversation. If you need to talk in an interview with a designer, focus the conversation in design topics. Ask questions about design. If you need to talk in the interview process with an engineer, ask questions about engineering things. You don't need to know about engineering, but you can be curious and say, hey, when you develop a project, what's the first thing that you do? And be curious. If you don't get the job, this is another tip. Sometimes you feel sad, oh my God, I didn't get the job, I need to work, and you want to quit. Don't quit. Send a follow-up email. Ask the recruiter, why you didn't get the job in a friendly way, because you want to improve for the next opportunity with other company. If you get the job, the same, send a follow-up email saying thank you for helping me in the process. Maybe to learn what you did well. It's really important to send a follow-up email after interview, if you get or not the job.
When you complete the certificate program, which you're very close to doing, I want you to have all the tools necessary to find a great job. Lots of UX designers find work with companies in need of long-term design solutions. Other times, UX designers find work on their own as freelancers. A freelancer is a person who is self-employed, runs their own business, and isn't committed to a particular client long-term. A lot of organizations rely on freelancers as part of their workforce. It's very common for companies to hire designers to work on projects that end once the project's goals are achieved. The freelance designers can then work on other projects with other clients. Once you've worked with a client, depending on their needs and how happy they are with your work, they could turn into long-term recurring clients. This offers some additional benefits that can make freelancing easier, such as having to spend less time finding other clients and developing contracts. So, let's talk about why someone might choose to become a freelancer. First, being a freelancer means working for yourself. You can choose to work only with certain types of clients or projects and decide your work hours. Although working for yourself also means you're responsible for marketing, finance, operations, and all other business needs, for many people, the flexibility of freelancing is important. They may have health concerns or family responsibilities that make full-time roles difficult. Or they might just feel more productive working hours that aren't supported by traditional office environments. This flexibility means freelancing can be a great option if you find yourself between other types of employment too. Second, freelancing is a great way to expand your portfolio. It's totally normal to be working on lots of short to medium-term projects that span multiple project types and industries as a successful freelancer. This helps you build a diverse portfolio quickly, depending on the number and variety of your clients. Third, freelancing gives you a great opportunity for networking as a designer. When you freelance, everyone you meet is another opportunity to promote your work, get new clients, and expand your network of working professionals. And finally, being a freelancer is a great way to grow your skills and knowledge of UX design. With each opportunity, project, and connection comes a new set of challenges to learn from. Now that you have a good idea of what it's like to be a freelancer, let's explore how to start setting up your freelance business. In the next few videos, we'll cover creating a business plan, finding clients, and landing projects. Meet you there.
My name is Jennifer, and I'm a user experience research manager at Google. We work with folks called product managers who are responsible for setting the strategy for products. I work with engineers who build the products. I work with designers and other researchers. We collaborate in many different ways to collect insights about customers and then to translate those insights or things that we learn about our customers into new products and new features that help people do their job better. I had a very untraditional path into UX, but in fact, I find that many people in UX have somewhat untraditional backgrounds. So I actually studied engineering formally, but I always had this very strong interest in people, technology, and the design piece. But it took me a while to find my way into user experience. And my path in between those two areas involved me starting out in engineering, and then I explored marketing for a little bit. And then I moved on to freelance consulting, which really pulled me knee deep into a user experience. And that really set me on the path towards user experience more formally. As a freelancer, I initially started out doing many different things for organizations. So I was doing project management. I was, helping them with office management as well, but then also helping them with websites. And as I got better and better and got more clients, I started to specialize more and more in just the user experience portion, just websites or web-based applications. And so what that looked like is I started out with one client. Eventually I had 3 or 4 clients, usually 2 to 3 clients at a time. Everything that you do as a freelancer is a tremendous growth opportunity. And you fundamentally make the choice about all the projects that you work on. And so you have this opportunity to really try a variety of projects. Many of the times they could be projects that are outside of what you're very familiar with. So that's one opportunity. Another opportunity actually is the opposite of that. As a freelancer, you have the opportunity to specialize. I had a background working with nonprofits and social enterprises. And so while I did do work for many different kinds of organizations, I found my special niche really working for nonprofits and social enterprises. And that community really gave me the opportunity to build my network. The scariest thing for me as a freelancer was getting started. I had pretty much been used to having standard traditional jobs most of my life. And even though I did side projects here and there, for me to take that leap and be completely dependent on freelancing was a big stretch. And so that idea of leaving behind kind of the security of a stable, regular income was really, really frightening. But at the same time, the opportunity of trying to do something solo, trying to do something where I could pretty much pick the kinds of projects I want as a target, I could learn and grow in any direction that I wanted. All of those things really kind of offset the fears that I had about making this major leap. Take on as many projects as you can. Variety really is the spice of life in this domain. There are so many different things you learn from each and every project. It's very important as a designer for you to have a good portfolio, a portfolio that demonstrates the breadth and depth and the height of your work. And the only way you can get there is by taking on as many projects as you can.
Now that you have an idea of what it's like to work as a freelancer, let's explore how you can make a business plan. A business plan is key to establishing who you are as a freelancer and what your client should expect from you. In this video, we'll cover a list of questions that you should be able to clearly answer as you build your business plan. Keep in mind, these questions don't have to be answered in any particular order, but the more of these questions that you answer, the better you'll understand your business. So let's get started. First, what's your brand identity? Talk about who you are to potential clients interested in your services or any partners you're trying to recruit to help you. A brand identity isn't just a name and logo. It's what you stand for and how you want clients and customers to feel about you. What problem are you solving for your clients? One thing we've talked a lot about in this program is how versatile UX can be. It's important to showcase how you can help your clients and what kinds of user problems you can solve. Maybe you're good at upfront research and brainstorming effective ideas. Or maybe you're an expert in wireframing and prototyping for testing. Or maybe you provide end-to-end solutions and services. Whatever it is, being clear to potential customers about the problems you can solve for them is important to building a strong freelance business. What specialized solution are you providing? To go along with the type of problems you're solving, can you also provide a unique business solution? For example, you might be fluent in multiple languages, which could be helpful for a company looking to expand into different markets. Or maybe you're an expert in mobile-first UX design and can help companies turn websites into mobile-friendly experiences. Knowing the unique skills you bring to the table as a designer can help your freelance business thrive. Who are you targeting as your preferred clientele? Knowing your ideal type of client can help you narrow your messaging and branding in order to appeal to those clients. For example, if you have previous experience working in bars or restaurants, you might be in a great position to attract clients in the hospitality industry, since you understand their business challenges and jargon. Take a moment to think about your own work history or past personal experiences and consider how that might influence the type of freelance design work you're best suited to do. Who's your competition? Get an understanding of the competitive landscape by learning about the other businesses that are competing for the same potential clients. This could be marketing firms, design agencies, or other freelancers. You can use the competitive audit skills you've developed throughout this program in a new way to scope out the competition for your own freelance business. What are your business expenses? You need to know your budget inside and out, including what it costs to keep your business running on a weekly, monthly, and annual basis. The amount of money you're able to bring in and the amount you need to spend are both key to creating your budget. Everything from your equipment, internet and phone bills, and rent should be included. So should your operation costs like advertising, marketing, and billing, and working with other people like partners, employees, and vendors. How much are you going to charge for your services? Your cost, also known as your rate, should be one of the last questions you answer because it needs to account for the market rate for similar services and your expenses. Your rate should be fair but competitive and still cover your expenses. Successful freelancers can make a very comfortable living by providing high-quality, specific services that they charge at a high but fair rate for the market. It's possible to reach this level of success, but it's not easy or quick, so be prepared to put in some work. And last but not least, what's your overall goal? Pick a goal that's aspirational but attainable, that you could accomplish in a reasonable amount of time, like in 3 to 5 years. For example, your goal might be to hit a certain amount of annual revenue, to work with a particular brand that you admire, or to build a broad portfolio of work that you're proud of. Whatever it might be, it's good to have a longer-term goal that can help guide your short-term decisions. That's it. You now know all about how to create a business plan for your freelance work. Having a detailed vision and a great business plan can keep you on the right track and help you land your first client. Let's discover how in the next video. Hi, with your business plan in place, it's time to learn how you can start finding clients as a freelancer. Let's begin by defining the type of work that you see yourself doing as a freelancer. There are a lot of ways to freelance. You can work alone. This option will give you the most freedom, but the most responsibility. You can partner with a web developer. Working with a partner generally means collaborating on the creative work and making decisions together. There's a lot to be gained from a partnership too, such as technical know-how or additional connections to clients. Or you can work with a freelance marketplace like Fiverr, Wix, or Toptal. Working in a marketplace can give you creative freedom, and the marketplace will serve as the third party for your client transactions. Keep in mind, that comes with a fee. Whichever direction you choose, it's important that you have an up-to-date portfolio that highlights your design capabilities. Reviewing your portfolio will always be something that potential clients are interested in. To start your freelancing career, it's helpful to create a social media page for your new business that includes a link to your portfolio. Once you've created a social media page, add some information about who you are as a UX designer and what your business is aiming to do for clients. You should also post some examples of your work. You can post about your new company on your personal social media profiles too, in order to reach as many potential customers as possible. You might even want to ask your friends to like or share some of your business page posts to broaden your reach. Offering a small finder's fee for any referrals that sign on as clients is a great way to thank your friends for their help and make it more worthwhile to share your business information with their networks. Your professional and personal networks can be a valuable tool in starting your own business, so make the most of it. You can also consider offering your services pro bono or free to clients. As you think about working for free, try to focus on projects in markets you want to learn more about or to support a cause that you're interested in. Treat pro bono projects like any other client, and be sure to agree on the scope of work that needs to be completed up front. You should also be open and honest about what you're hoping to get out of the relationship. I know, the idea of working for free doesn't sound appealing, but these projects can give you a lot of great practice and experience. It can also deepen your UX design knowledge while adding more projects to your portfolio. One pro tip I have for you is to be mindful of what we call scope creep. This is when the details of a project you're planning or scoping slowly increase until the project is much more complex than what was originally planned. This often happens with free work because any extra work hours needed for the bigger project cost you time and money, but not the client. Sometimes scope creep is intentional and sometimes it isn't. So don't be afraid to prepare a new scope of work for pro bono clients that includes rates for additional work. You might also use this time to reach out to small businesses in your local community that could use your services. Pitching takes time and a lot of research. You can create some designs for these proposals and repurpose them for your portfolio too. All of this work to build up your business will help you grow your client base and give you more variety in your design portfolio. It can be intimidating to start a business, but it can also be extremely rewarding and offer several paths to success. I also encourage you to feel free to switch paths if you're not getting the traction or the work you're looking for. You can always start at a marketplace and then branch off to work alone or in a partnership. The choice is yours. Okay, your freelance business is starting to take form. You have a business plan in place and you have some ideas for how to find your first customers. Up next, I'll share some tips for landing your first customer. Let's keep going. Imagine this. You have a client who's interested in your work and wants you to design a product for them. Feel free to get a little excited. The week after you meet the client at a networking event, the potential client sends you a request for proposal. The first thing you need to do is review the request for proposals, or RFP, which includes a scope of work and date to submit your proposal by. A scope of work is a document that outlines the project that you will be completing. It lays out the needs, objectives, timelines, constraints, and any external work you might need to get to complete the project. Next, you want to prepare a proposal to respond to the RFP. A proposal outlines your approach to successfully deliver the work scoped in the RFP. This is where you impress the client with all of the information you've learned about them, the industry, and their competitors. Your proposal also helps to instill confidence in your ability to do the work on time and on budget while meeting the project objectives. Usually, a proposal includes a budget estimate that details the expenses and profit margins that add up to an appropriate cost for your services. Sometimes, a client will want to negotiate this price. It's very important that you have a price that you won't drop below. You have a business and expenses that you have to manage, and devaluing your services can hurt that business. Once the client selects a contractor or freelancer based on their proposal, the client will provide a statement of work. A statement of work is a legally binding document that includes a list of detailed deliverables, their due dates, and a payment schedule. As the contractor, you will need to either agree to the proposed statement of work or negotiate any pieces you want changed. For example, if the schedule for deliverables is faster than what you can realistically turn around, you should negotiate a new schedule prior to signing the contract. The statement of work will also define how and when you'll share in-progress work with your client. This will help you both manage your expectations and get feedback on changes that are needed before finishing the project. Another item you'll want to negotiate as part of the statement of work is a payment schedule. A payment schedule lists expected payment dates and any upfront costs and contingencies. With creative work, you'll want to take some payment upfront. This can vary based on your preferences and needs, but it's normal to get between 40 and 50% upfront. This number can change based on the structure of your payments. If you'd rather have 4 installments, that number could be 25% upfront. Though there are many ways this works, just make sure that you are paid for the work that you do. Now that you've got a better idea of the work and payment schedule, it's time to review the SOW. In some cases, the client might provide the SOW for you to sign. In other cases, you might draft the contract yourself. If you need to draft the contract yourself, there are sites like Nolo, LegalZoom, and Web Design Law that have contract templates and clearly describe the process of creating legally binding contracts. For more complicated projects, it might be better to hire a contract lawyer to draw up your agreement. Now it's time to agree on the contract and sign. Once you and your client have both signed the contract, you can give your new client an invoice for the agreed-upon down payment. When you get your first payment, it's time to get to work and meet your deadlines. First clients are great. Sure, it can be a little stressful, but landing your first client is important for your new business. Word of mouth is one of the most powerful tools you'll have. Your first clients can refer colleagues to your services, and they might even agree to give you a shout out on their own social networks or website. Or, in an ideal world, your first clients might come back to you for repeat business. Good luck with the new clients. You're going to do great. It might be hard to believe, but that's it for this part of the course. You now have the skills you need to enter the professional world of UX design. In this part of the course, you prepared your portfolio for job applications. Next, you explored the UX design interview process. You learned how to conduct pre-interview research about the job and company you're applying to. Then, you got to know different types of interviewers and develop strategies to build rapport with those interviewers. After that, you learned how to structure your responses to interview questions using the STAR method. We also explored some common types of UX design interview questions, including an elevator pitch, a portfolio presentation, a whiteboard exercise, and a take-home design exercise. Finally, you entered the world of freelancing. You created a business plan, and you learned how to find and land your first customer. You've added so many tools to your UX design toolbox during this part of the course. You are now ready to conquer the world of job applications, interviews, and even freelancing. You're ready to take the next step into the field of UX design, no matter what that step might be.
Wow, congratulations. You made it through You persevered. I'm so proud of you.
This is a really big accomplishment.
I'm so excited for you. I can't wait for you to become a UX designer.
Really great job sticking through it.
This is such hard work and you totally deserve it. I'm very excited for your next adventure.
Now is your chance to celebrate. Take a moment and look at what you've done and run through the halls cheering.
You did it!
That's fantastic.
We are so proud of you.
Phenomenal job.
Wonderful work.
Way to go.
We're so excited for you.
You're a UX designer.
Welcome to the journey.
Woo! You did it! Congrats!
Congrats.
Congrats.
Felicitaciones.
Congratulations.
This is just the first step to a long-lasting, wonderful career in UX design.
You just completed the Google UX Design Certificate. That's a serious accomplishment, and you should truly be proud. Let me say it one more time. Congratulations! There might have been points along the way when you were discouraged or exhausted, but you didn't give up. You've shown some serious dedication and perseverance. Those traits will serve you well as you step into your new career as a UX designer. Let's review all you've learned throughout this program. You started by building a foundation in UX design. You reviewed common job responsibilities of entry-level UX designers and other teams you might work with. You learned common terms, tools, and frameworks UX designers use. You explained why design sprints are an important and useful part of a UX designer's work. And you started to develop a professional online presence, including beginning your portfolio and joining online UX communities. Next, you started the design process for your first portfolio project. You empathized with users, defined the problem, and ideated on possible solutions. Along the way, you realized that understanding the world from a user's point of view is one of the most important jobs of a UX designer. That empathy includes a focus on accessibility and is a key component to designing for everyone. After that, you sketched wireframes on paper and created them digitally in Figma. Then you moved into the prototype phase of the design process. You built your first low-fidelity prototype of an app, and you saw your designs in action. You also learned the importance of ethics in the field of UX design. In the next course, you used everything you learned to create another project. This time, it was a responsive website that you created in Adobe XD. You learned all about designing for websites, including sitemaps and common web page layouts. You also added a second case study to your portfolio to showcase your work, searched for jobs in UX design, and created a resume too. And finally, you followed the design process again to build the final project for your portfolio. You combined all of your skills to design a dedicated mobile app and responsive website for social good. You wrapped up the course by polishing your portfolio, getting ready for the job interview process, and exploring freelance work. It was an incredible amount of work, and it's clear that you're ready to start your new career. The learning doesn't end here, though. Keep polishing your designs and updating your portfolio to show off your best work. And whether you become a specialist or a generalist, there's always more to learn, new skills to gain, and additional ways to connect with users and your peers in UX design. You've already shown some serious dedication to the field, so stay curious. It's been wonderful leading you through the final part of this program. I know you're already well prepared for a fantastic career in UX design. Good luck.